May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Aman. All right, welcome. Once again, sorry for running behind. Got a little bit of stuff that was going on, but it's all fine. It all turned out well. We're appreciative. We're thankful and grateful to have you on with us today. And thank you for being on with us. We appreciate your presence as always. We're thankful for your presence as always. Thank you for being on with us, whether you're joining from different platforms, whether it's your first time listening in, if you want first time listening, one time with many, whatever the case might be. We're thankful and grateful. Yeah, I know, right? Sometimes that's a great coping mechanism, if you will. I call them stress tools, but it's a great way. Sometimes, if you're going through some stuff, sometimes just a little woosah, just a little. All right. But hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Osayo, Ohio. I see you. Kamsa, kamsamida. Aku aba, etc. Habari, jambo, mimi ni Kofi, nina franco kutana na wewe. Shalom, including Raishan Shalom, because it's the new moon. So Raishan Shalom, it is the beginning of our new week, even though it is the third day actually, but we a new moon last night. It is now the beginning of our new week, and we're excited and grateful and thankful for that. So Raishan Shalom and even Shabbat Shalom, Bakur Tav, Bakur Tav, Barak Alad Sham Yahava, Anai Kofi, at Halet, at Yashrel, at Yehava. Mashalam Khe. We hope that you're doing well. Hello, I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And we're glad and thankful for another opportunity to be in front of you again. And today, I'm excited about today's content. However, before we get into today, once again, we give all praise and honor to the Most High Yahweh Elohim, Atsham, Yahweh Atsham, Yashva Atsham, Ruvach HaKodash. We give all honor and praise to him for my wife who's on. Hey, babe, how you doing? Love you very much. The Honorable Maya, Elder Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we're thankful and grateful for what she does. Her business is making sure that the health of the diaspora is, in fact, her business. So we thank you guys for being on. To the moderators, ministerial staff, SOC, to the diaspora. If you agree with us, disagree with us, if it's your first time on, one time of many, we appreciate your presence today. We're thankful for you. Hopefully you did well with your fast. We're in the midst of a family fast right now. We're Monday through Friday. Every day we're doing intermittent fasting. So just a reminder for you guys, if it's your first time with us, letting you know that we're in the middle of intermittent fasting. So we're trying to do from sun up to sundown. Oh, I'm sorry, those are classes. You're more than welcome to be part of those. I'm sorry, that's not what I was looking for. Wait a minute. Here we go. So if you'd like to be part of the family fast, we are making sure that we are fasting this week. So as long as you don't have any medication or anything that you're on that prevents you from it, we're asking that you join us if you're able to, if you're prepared to, and if you need a little extra, something like if it gets a little tough for you, feel free to add some water. Add some water with your water that you're drinking. Feel free to add like some lemon, lime, some kind of fruit juice if necessary, maybe even some salt to be able to help your cells to be able to hold the water. And if you're having problems where you think you need to eat, sometimes you just need to increase the amount of water that you're having. And that way your body, your cells especially but even your stomach specifically can be able to kind of be tricked into being like, okay, we're full long enough for you to make it to the evening. I promise you it's going to bless you. You're going to see a lot of stuff come out, not just physically, but also you're going to see some things come out spiritually. And we're excited about what the fasting is bringing about. So if you guys are interested, and if you guys are doing so, we're thankful. We're appreciative of you. We're grateful for you. And we look forward to talking to you guys very soon. All righty. So let's go ahead and say hello to everybody real quick before we get into today. I'm excited about today. I really didn't know what I was going to talk about until earlier this rising, but I'm excited about the content and the change of character that we're going to do, and we're going to move together. So how you doing, Sister Latoya? How you doing, Mike Bell? I can't remember what the name was. Was it Michelle? I can't remember. I'm sorry. You need a word this yam, right? It's a Shabbat. Yeah, I get you. Right. Hey, how you doing? To IG_truth. Tori, right? Tori Ashland. I keep trying to say like Tori or Torias for some reason. But Tori, Darren, how you doing? Sister Betty, Ted, Herd 3802, Brightborn, User 3795. How you doing? Grand rising to you. How you doing? Sister Aliens, always dedicated to becoming a greater person. Ladybug, thank you, Big Lucky, for being on, and appreciate the love, by the way. If I missed any gifts or anything like that, thank you in advance for gifts, likes, shares, donations you guys give, even behind the scenes, the things that you guys do. We appreciate you so very much. Romac, how you doing? Money Green, Lego. I don't know if I'm to pronounce this. I'm gonna say it, Lauren. Legoff, Lugoff, or Legoff. I'm not sure. LAGAU 4F for you. How you doing? Let's see. Ben Stacking, thanks for being on. Big Roy, Sister Nadine. Once again, to my wife, the Honorable Maya. Thank you, babe. Love you very much. Thank you for your support as always. Acoustic Resonator. Hello. Savannah Speaks. Hello. Glenn Cole. Sister Irena, how you doing? Let's see. Ted, David, Ted, Taryn. Spike Me Too. Up, and something just popped up. If, by the way, if somebody's trying to call in or something, especially through TikTok, you can feel free to. But I don't. If I don't know what you're calling about, or you don't put it in the chat, I'm not really going to have you come on, because we have to kind of protect the platform, and all it takes is somebody saying and doing one thing that kind of gets us, strikes and stuff. So we got to know who you are, what you're dealing, and how you doing, Brother Alton. Israel Whispers. Miss Pierce, Sister Sharice, Sister Kendra, OG Smokeman, and hopefully you're doing well, Sister Kendra. Still praying for you. Feel free to check in if you need to. J Bug, Yosef, everybody, Lottie Dottie, everybody. Welcome. All right, let's go ahead and get into this message for the day, this word for the day. And once again, we appreciate your presence. We are talking specifically today about how do we word it? Documentation of devastation. Documentation of devastation. Documentation of devastation. So people say that we're just making stuff up. And I know, once again, see, I have to let's just go ahead and put this out in the beginning as well. See, I already know. And how you doing, Sir Stephen? All right. I already know. I already am well aware that it doesn't matter how much you show somebody documentation, right? It doesn't matter to some people. And that's why we talk about this, whether we're talking about the Bible or otherwise. We tell everybody that this is not for everybody, right? This is not for everybody. So I'm already well aware, right? How you doing, who that? I'm already well aware that what we talk about today is something that a lot of people just aren't going to see, no matter how much you try to give it to them. How you doing, Sister Marion? How you doing, Inspired? Thanks for being on, right? How you doing, Big Dodge Custom? So I'm already aware. It doesn't matter how much you show some people something, they've already made up their mind, right? Whether we're talking straight Bible, whether you're talking about straight facts, whether you're talking about historical documentation, etc. I am already aware that there's a lot of people who will not see and therefore be able to receive what we're doing, what we're talking about. It is Michelle. Okay. How you doing, Sister Denise? Right. I'm already aware, and you have to be well aware already. Right. Like we have this thing that says that everybody's supposed to be for truth, but Luke chapter 12, reminds us that, hey, do you think I came that there would be peace on earth, that everybody would get along? You think that's the reasoning for my coming? Right. Yahshua said that. He said, I didn't come here for that. He said, I came here that mother would be against daughter, and father against son, and mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and father-in-law against son-in-law, and cousins against each other, etc. He said also, do you think I came that there would be peace on earth? He said, I didn't come bringing peace. He said, I came bringing a sword. In other words, this kind of mindset causes people to be enraged, to fight. Because if you are not in truth, you will fight. You will fight for a lie. There's an emotional response. People are emotionally attached. This is why we have something that we talk about quite often, right? I'll try to write it out. It's going to be difficult probably for me to make sure everybody can see it at the same time. So you guys have to give me a second. And you probably have to do some screenshots of this. But, I talk about this often, but if you haven't gone through this with us before when we've written it out, it probably might not have seeped into your mind as of yet. But it's the real, right? Actually, yeah. Okay, we got it right. So we have a lot of people that are fighting. And as I give you simply just contextual facts, not just facts without context, but context with facts, right? Like pointing out chemicals, somebody can only see clouds. Yeah, right. If somebody's not willing to study and research and see what's actually in the cloud, for sure, right? But so you have to comprehend that you're dealing with a system and with an enemy that knows some of these tools more than we do. And we keep denying it. We keep saying, oh, the enemy is stupid or dumb or slow because you think they're evil. But just because somebody's evil doesn't mean they don't know anything. And so if you're going to go and deal with somebody's habits, you have to realize that culture ultimately leads to the change of habits. Like we talked about yesterday, the environment that somebody's in. How you doing, Sister Deborah? See, the environment that somebody is in will change what somebody does. You're trying to change the person, but you have to change the environment. And you have to first study the environment for yourself to see if the environment is inhabitable. Because how can you have habits, right, if your habits are not built for the habitation? Can you inhabit the environment you're trying to take control of? So I'll show this on YouTube first, and then I'll back it up some so those that are on TikTok can see it, right? But just give me a second. So if you want, take a screenshot of this, right? But this is what we're going to be talking about. At least not the whole time, but at least to start. When I say culture to habits, I know a lot of us hear me say culture to habits and hear me go through this stuff. And you guys probably just think that this is stuff that I just randomly spit off, but this stuff I spend hours and hours and hours, right, to make sure that I can write out. So for those that are on TikTok, hopefully you'll be able to see it as I come out some, right? But you're talking about, oh, I'm sorry, I got to reverse the screen for you guys. I apologize. I forgot about that. Let me mirror the video. There we go. All right. So you got to recognize what we're talking about. You see, people get emotional. That's number 3, right? People have been living in habits their whole life. See, culture is everything. Culture is everything. Culture is everything. Yeah, culture is everything. So culture is going to influence what you believe, your belief, right? And problem is, though, once culture influences your belief, you got to recognize that people get emotional about what they believe. This is what most of the fight comes from. It's not that you're wrong or right. It's that people have an emotional attachment to what they believe. Therefore, really have an emotional attachment to the culture that they proclaim makes them who they are. Right? Like your culture. And this is something I actually got from Dr. Leah Africa's, somebody who I somewhat consider myself to be a disciple of. Right? And we added the last 2 on there over time. But culture is going to inform your belief system. Just outright. So how I live, or how people live around me, what the song of the day is, what the word of the day is, how many times I say the Pledge of Allegiance, all these different things or whatever, they affect what I believe. If you pledge allegiance every day in school to the flag, which is a standard of the United States of America Corporation, to the Republic, the kingdom for which it stands, one nation, trying to be part of that nation and live as it, under God, not even Elohim, but under God, indivisible, can't be divided, right? They're not going to let you divide them. With liberty, that means you're allowed to do certain things according to law or legal system, and justice for all who are in that group, that country, under that standard, in that republic or kingdom. So if that's the culture you come out of, every day you do that. And thank you for the love. Appreciate it. Every day I'm doing it. Every day I'm reciting that. Every day my children are doing it. Every day they're reciting it. Eventually they begin to believe what they go through. And if I believe it long enough, right, then emotion is not even a spiritual thing. Emotion is not even as much as you think a psychological thing, although it affects the psyche. Emotion is literally emotion. You literally are moving in a certain way. When you think a certain way, your brain patterns move a certain way. The motion of your brain patterns. If you are sad, you could put your hands up in the air like this in what they call a victory pose. You could go like this, like somebody won. Yeah, I won. I won. Right? You could put your hands in the air like that and do that. Go into the sun, take your shoes off, put your feet in the grass. Maybe not so much today because it seems to be pretty cold, right? But put your feet in the grass and literally stand there like that. No matter how bad you feel, guess what's going to happen after a while? You will have an emotional response because your body has taken a certain physical position. You will feel better, right? You can't help it. You'll start to smile. Even if you know that things are still bad, you'll start to smile because you can control your physical what? Motion. If you are emotionally, if you are sad, you have emotion. So if you're happy, that's why they teach you about posture. See, they didn't tell you all the keys to why, but that's why they teach you about posture, having great posture. If you have great posture, even if the day is going wrong, if your shoulders are back, you're sending a signal to your brain that says, look, I don't know if everything's together, but you got your shoulders back. So I guess we're all right. You put your head back, right? You start to feel a certain way. Matter of fact, if somebody goes like this too long, and right, and especially if they're laying down, the motion of the positioning of your body, if the blood reaches the back of your head, right, you become euphoric. You start to have things like that. Yeah, there you go, right? Even Mashach or Moses, when he was in the wilderness, right? And he was, he held a victory pose. Even Joshua, when Joshua held the sun still, he held a victory pose. With Moses, a lot of times when you see him stretch forth his staff, right, over the sea, you oftentimes will see people draw him like going like this as well, right? Like these are things that are emotional. It's a physical manifestation of what's going on, right? So the culture, once again, the culture is informing your belief system. The belief system is informing your emotions. What you believe is what you start to exude. Now, whatever you're emotional about, after a while, the emotions turn into what you call feelings. Yashva is the actual name of who people call Yesus or Yesu or Jesus or Jesus or half man, half Zeus. But half man, half Zeus is not his name, and it's not who he is, ultimately. So that's why we call him Yashva. But yes, in a sense, you could say they're the same person. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? How you doing, Sister Helen? So the way you feel is based off of how long you've been stuck in that emotion because you believed something, right? If you have anxiety, for example, why are you anxious? You're anxious because something about how you live is coming from your culture, right? So you believe, hey, when certain things happen in the culture like this, right? When somebody gives you a pink slip, it means that a devastation happens for people. When somebody says your rent is due and you can't pay, culturally, normally what happens next? You get kicked out. You've believed it because you've seen it enough, right? So now, since you believe it enough, you start having an emotional response to what you believe. And if you have that emotional response long enough, you start to feel a certain way. So your emotions, your endorphins, your synapses, your pituitary gland, your hypothalamus, all this stuff, it starts to have these different motions, right? You start to have these different motions. So now you start to feel a certain way, right? Even your body. So a lot of sickness, for example, your body feels a certain way because you're stressed. Your body can't tell the difference between I'm stressed out about this, I'm stressed out about that, right? Your body can't tell if it's a bear chasing me, if somebody's shooting at me, if somebody's cussing me out, if I'm just, kind of sad, whatever. If I'm in stress long enough, the stress takes over. That's how your body is built. Right. And so you'll stop eating food correctly because you can't digest food. Why? Because your body's like, well, something's going on with stress. We shut everything down. Remember, like if you're in the cold for a long time, what happens? Being in the cold. And how you doing? I'm sorry, Uno Nuno and Brother Jeremy, how you doing? So remember, if you're in the cold, if you're in the cold for a while, right? Like your body says, okay, eventually I'm going to shut down everything except the torso. and accept the head, right? Like I'm gonna shut the fingers and toes down. That's the first thing to get cold and start freezing, right? Then it says, okay, we got to shift the warmth. Okay, arms, y'all got to go. Legs, you got to go. Toes, you got to go, right? And it slowly starts getting to a place where then it starts selectively deciding, your brain says, I got to shut down certain organs because the environment that you're in, right, has a certain belief system. And I'm in the cold, right? I'm in the culture of cold. So I believe that if I'm not careful, I could die out here if I get too cold. So what happens? Emotions, certain things start running in your body. And so now you say, I feel cold. So if somebody's anxious, you're just anxious because in your culture, this is the belief system about what happens when you're going through something. The emotions of your body start running, and now you feel a certain way. Hallelujah, right? And so since you feel this way, you get into what's called a mood. Right? If you feel a certain way, and I'm sorry I'm missing the comments right now. I can't really see them because of the board situation, but I'll try to get to them as soon as possible, right? But because you feel a certain way, now you're in a mood. Your mood is just based off of how you feel. You feel a certain way long enough, now you're in a mood. I'm in a bad mood. Why? Because you've had bad feelings. Why? Because you've had emotions run in a certain way that solicit a negative response. Why? Because you have a bad belief system based off of what? Bad culture. Which now, what happens when you're in a bad mood? You can't really put effort or energy towards the things that you need to do. My effort or energy is based upon my mood, which is based upon my feelings. How do I feel? If I don't feel a certain way, then how in the world am I going to put effort or energy towards something? If my emotions and if the motion of my body is all haywire and crazy, how in the world am I going to be able to? You see what I'm saying? If I don't believe that I can do it, then my body will reflect it, which means my body will feel what I reflect. Therefore, I'm going to be stuck in the mood. So how in the world can I have the effort or energy necessary? And what does that lead to ultimately? That leads to how your habits are affected. Habits should really be nothing more than you see. Habits are establishing, or if you're not careful, or if you are careful, habits reestablish culture. It's a circle. My habits that I am giving now simply give birth to somebody else's culture, which hopefully, if I'm doing it correctly, will be the same culture that I give. We're passing down culture through our habits. What do we do every day? So your habits, how long does it take to develop a habit, by the way? See, never be afraid, never be ashamed, never be disgusted. Oh, it's taking me a long time to change, or this is a lot. How in the world am I going to get it? Yeah, it takes a long time. A habit takes at least 21 days. Some people would argue 28 days. In the book 21 Days of Motivation, I was blessed to be able to write. I stuck with 21. 21 days of do this, do that. What's right versus righteous? Focus on that today. Okay, add that to what you're doing. What's love? Add that to what you're doing today. How do you invest in certain things? Add that to what you're doing today. How do you deal with your time? Things like that, right? So your culture affects your belief, which affects your emotion, which affects your feelings, which affects your mood, which gives birth to effort or energy that therefore affects your habits, right? And so if I'm ever dealing with somebody, this is basically some of the stuff that I think about. If somebody says, man, you know what, I'm in a bad mood, I stop right there. And before we start talking about the effort or energy they're putting into things and their habits, I already know those are going to be off if their mood is bad. They already told me that when they said I'm in a bad mood. So guess what I do? Somebody says I'm in a bad mood. So guess what I do? I say, okay, well, how do you feel? Somebody says, well, I just told you I'm in a bad mood. No, no, no. How do you feel? Well, I feel depressed about this, blah, blah, that. Okay. All right. So then we start looking at emotions. What are some coping mechanisms we can come up with, even emotionally? Can you close your eyes? Can you breathe in? Can you do this? Can you do that? Right. And then we go back up to, then we start dealing with your belief system. What does your belief system say about what you're going through emotionally? What is your belief system? What is your canon? What is it that you listen to? Who is it that you listen to? What books do you read? What are you believing in? And then I start asking how you live, culture. Once we've established all those things, then we can start talking about why you don't put effort into certain things and start dealing with these habits that are going to happen over time. Right? You see, culture is everything. All right, now I'll try and get back to the comments. I apologize. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Sister Bree? I know I missed a lot of them. I saw moving up. How you doing, Sister Monica? I'm sorry, babe. You said earlier, stress hormones break down slowly as well. So once stressed, you stay stressed for a while. Yeah. Your emotional state affects your body and mind. Amen, Sister Betty. Yeah. So these are things that we know, but we haven't necessarily gotten stress tools or things that we can utilize. And we even have at least one video talking about culture to habits. So if you want to go ahead and look at that on our YouTube channel, feel free to look into that, to peek that, see what's going on. Right. You said you started doing ice baths, great benefits for the body. Yeah, I haven't gotten into it. I've kind of sort of played around with cold showers, which actually kind of gets you started for the day and stuff like that. Or even like some people will literally, if they're able to have enough money, they'll like buy money next to a lake or next to whatever they can that they can jump into, in the rising, stuff like that, and they'll actually jump into cold water to get their day started. Right. It's an emotional response. Oh wow. Praying for you, Sister Alien. Yeah, that can be crazy. Somebody doing something like that. How you doing, Marky? Yeah, the fight or flight. See, I was actually thinking about saying that earlier. I didn't say it in that way, but sure. Right. But a lot of people, yeah, a lot of people do stuff where they even do stuff in cold. Why are they doing stuff with cold? Cold solicits a different emotional response. Just like warmth gives you a different emotional response. Cold says, oh, okay, we got to get ready. you know, Cold gives you an emotional response. That's the only reason why these things are being done, not because they're better or worse, but because they give you an emotional response. So you have to figure out what emotional response you want. So all that being said, right, I'm trying to show you how culture leads to habits. And ultimately, what we're really talking about today, and we're going to be able to take our time a little bit more than we could yesterday. Ultimately, what we're talking about today is what again? Is documentation of devastation. So I know that there's some habits that people have due to devastation. And I want to show you documentation that what we're talking about is real. We're going to give you some places that you can look, some context that maybe you've never seen, a cultural outlook that you've never seen. How you doing, PG Mark? Thanks for being on today. Um, and when we look at these things, what I want you to discover is that if you can see what was documented, what people did to you, now we at least can say, okay, this is what they did. Now we can start to fix it. Right? We've really been fixing it already, but we want to see something. We shouldn't run away from what happened. If this is what happened, this is what happened to us. Now, what can we do to get out of devastation? Because ultimately, documentation will lead us out of devastation, right? This destructive pattern of a system that we've been in so long. And how you doing, Anthony? Thanks for being on today. Said as a child, you lived by the river and take a bath every rising and every evening. Yeah, it's cold. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Right. Definitely cold. But you even get used to it. Something in your body says, okay, it's cold. I don't like this, but all right. And you even become more aware even before you hit the water. Why? Because that emotional response has stayed with you. It's now, there's a belief that you have about it now, and it becomes part of your culture. And that'll be something no matter how many times you don't jump in a cold river or lake or whatever, that'll be something that you never really forget, right? That stuff that will stick with you, right? It's become a habit, even a mindset habit. So when you get ready for certain things, you respond to certain things in a way that others don't have. You have an ability to be able to be awake in a way that other people can't be. Remember, well, I can't talk about conversations we have, but you have an ability to be able to see things that a lot of people do if you're not careful, right? Yeah, you have an ability to see things. Why? Because emotionally, you were put in a position to where your body had to react. So part of your belief system has become what? That I need to be ready before I just jump into anything. Even if I jump into it every day, I have to look for certain things. So when you see the unseen, people are like, why is she always seeing that? Why is she always talking like that? Why is she always doing it? You know why? Because you had to go through something over and over again that required you to be more attentive than the average person. How you doing, Minister Shante? Right. See, these are the things that this is real, right? You said it's so weird talking about that. You just think about jumping in the cold river. I'm not, right? It's amazing. See, this is why it's called parables. If we do this right, the parallels start to hit people, right? So that's why a lot of people I talk to, amen, Sister Betty, a lot of people that I talk to, they'll be like, why is it that people can't see what I see or this and that or whatever? Well, you've had different emotions in your life, things that happen to your body. We think emotions are feelings. Emotions lead to feelings, but emotions is the motion. It is how you move. It's how your body operates. It's how your cells move, right? So you've had different emotions that have affected your belief, or you even had different beliefs that cause you to do different things. If you did different things, you had a different emotional, physical responses, right? Your beliefs were based off of, once again, what? Your culture that you're in, or even try to leave a culture that you were once in, whatever, solicited different beliefs. Thank you for the love, appreciate it. Gave different belief systems that you carry, right? And these different belief systems that you now carry, they do what? They give you, they force you to have a different emotion, to do different things, even physically, right? If you do the same thing, like if somebody does this over and over again, you know what your brain starts to do? If you do this long enough, just do a little exercise if you're able. Obviously, if you're behind the wheel of a vehicle, if you're on the job or something like that, don't do something crazy. But if you do this long enough, guess what starts happening in your brain? Somewhere around here, you start actually feeling what's going on, right? You don't even realize, but that's like universal. If I see somebody talking and their head is going like this, especially, what's going on? But if somebody's going like this, they're saying, okay, let's get on to the next thing, right? But your brain will literally start saying, like, okay, let's go. Let's go. What are you doing? Right? Like, just because I'm going like this, right? Let's go on to the right thing. If I do it faster, guess what though? I get excited. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I get excited. That's why y'all remember this dance, right? 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 Like y'all remember that? Or when you're boxing, you hitting the speed bag, right? You start going faster and faster and faster to the point where it looks like it's going backwards and stuff like that, right? Like you get excited. You get excited. Oh, thank you for the love. I appreciate it. Right? You get excited about those things. It's an emotional response. My emotions, I can use my emotions. I can control my emotions. My emotions can dictate where I'm going next. Hallelujah. How you doing, Brother Henry? Right. So you said you were thinking just yesterday about jumping in after seeing some woman sitting ice. Yeah, if you're doing ice cold stuff, just make sure you're taking care of your body and that you're prepared for all that. But you know, you said you can see people's feelings toward you regardless of what their lips are saying. Exactly. Physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, right? Physiologically, we can't run away from some of these things. Wow, thank you again, Sister Nadine. Appreciate it. Right. So these are things that are real. These are things that are real, right? And so that's what I was saying. I comprehend that no matter what I say in this documentation of devastation, some people are emotionally attached to a belief system that says that what I'm about to give you culturally is inaccurate, because in their culture, they're supposed to hide the truth. How you doing, Sister Linda? Thanks for being on. Right. So I get that. And I'm not mad at it. That's why some people, Pastor Kofi, how do you have all this patience and blah, blah? I get that there's some people who don't have an emotion, or going to have an emotional response based upon that belief system they still carry. And it's okay. It's okay. They're supposed to. Thank you for the love again. You're supposed to. Hey, how you doing, Sister Tracy? Fabulous rising. I'm on. Right. You are supposed to feel a certain way about it because you have an emotional tie to what you believe. Your belief system is not always based off of the truth. It's just based off of your culture. Not every culture carries truth, right? So I just wanted to lay that out. I wanted to lay that out, and prayerfully that just blesses you for a multitude of reasons, right? Thank you, Amat. Thank you for that truth, right? But I just want to show you before we go into, a lot of people cannot believe what they're emotionally, they cannot believe what they are not emotionally attached to. This is why emotion happens every single day. What am I doing? What am I putting in motion every single day? That's emotion. EQ, emotional quotient, that people talk about, really is what am I putting in every single day, right? I have practice at it, Brother Henry, right? I'm on here every day. So I could have made a decision in the beginning to say, every time somebody says something bad to me, I'm going to go ahead and be just as bad back to them. Right. But I made a decision through the motions of my day. How you doing, Brother Vincent? I made a decision every day through the motions of my day. And I'm sorry, I just realized I never got back to you. If you want, try and reach out to me and text me afterwards. I don't have much time today, but I have more pockets in time. I'll try to make sure that I get back to you. I'm sorry about that, brother. I was praying for you, but I know I didn't get back to you. But I have an emotional response. And how you doing? Is it concrete? I still don't remember how to say. Is it? Oh, concrete. What was it? Concrete Rose one, right? How you doing? right? Will not retaliate, will not stoop to their level, right? That's an emotional response. What is the motion? If you do emotion long enough, we just showed you how it's going to lead to your habits. Okay. So I'm simply talking about today, and whether people get emotionally, whatever kind of way about it, right? And thank you for the likes, for the shares, subscriptions. Hit the notification tab if you're on YouTube. Those who've been supporting the videos, we put the olive bit up on this channel on TikTok. So if you want to go and look at it, it's only 59-second videos max on the olive bit. It's a little series we put together. I'm going to try and record them all in succession and then put them on YouTube. So you can feel free to look those up in a bit, once they get posted, but they are out on TikTok. I kept my promise with that. But obviously it's not as involved in the class, but it'll at least help you kind of with the culture a little bit. But these are some things that we want to do. Yeah, some people are trying to solicit an emotional response. They want you. Some people come on here, they want you, they need you. Can you say you're about a higher standard? Okay, I don't live by a higher standard. Some of them don't believe in a higher calling, something that you're invited to that's higher than where you are now. Some of them believe in their higher calling, but don't believe in yours. They think they're higher than you and don't want you to come up. Are you willing to make sure that you put together the emotional habits over and over and over again? You did. Amen, Sister Rhea, right? Thank you for listening or looking at those, right? So are you willing to put in the emotional response over and over and over and over and over and over again, no matter how much it takes, over and over and over and over again? If you're willing to do that, right, then we're willing to get to a place and a reality to where these things will match up for us, right? So if you can peel off the emotions, just I don't even say peel off the emotions. When the emotions show up, if you can just recognize that that's your belief fighting for a second, some of this stuff that we're going to talk about today will be a lot easier for you to obtain, to digest, etc. Right? Because remember, if you're stressed out, if you're stressed already emotionally, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to use the system of thought, right? Like just like you have a system for digestion, a system for circulation, you have a system for waste. Even though I guess you could say it's digestive system, urinary tract, all that. You have a system for nerves, right? You have a system that does all types of things. You have a system, endocrine system. You have all these different systems where you have a system for thought. And if you start getting stressed, right, your body is trying to figure out why there's cognitive dissonance there. You believe in a culture that I'm giving you something that is on the other side. That's a natural response, right? When I learn a lot of things, some things I can't even finish watching or reading at the moment. I have to walk away and take a break. You know why? Because I get anxious. I'm like, oh gosh, is this going to really break my reality? I thought this was this, right? I can't watch certain movies, even ones I've seen before. I know what's going to happen because I still get anxious because I'm like, this is messing with my belief system, right? So it's important that we get that. How you doing, Minister Sonia? Thanks for being on. So these are things that we have to recognize and realize, right? These are things that we have to recognize and realize and think about quite often. How you doing, Drea? So today, hopefully you've seen the foundation laid out. This is why some people won't even look at what we're talking about today, which is what we're talking about, documentation of devastation, right? If it's your grandmama who's documented smiling at people hanging from trees, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to take in what somebody's saying. That's an extreme example, but it's real. You get what I'm saying? Like if it's your daddy, and we'll come to find out your daddy was out there shooting people, but your daddy is Deacon so and so, it's hard for you to hear the rest of the truth because somebody's influencing your beliefs. And these are extreme examples, but it's real, right? Documentation of devastation. See, I wanted to say even of destruction today, but the Holy Spirit kept leading me to say devastation, devastation. Why? Because it's devastating. It is devastating. Truth can be devastating sometimes. It is not always, but truth can be devastating sometimes. It is difficult to pull a tree up by the roots. knowing that that tree has been there for 100 years? What about if it's been there for 400 years? Even if you don't like what the fruit the tree bears, if you've seen the tree and people have seen the tree for generations for 400 years, and somebody says, we're going to pull it up by the root, it's difficult. This is why somebody has a problem with tearing down a statue of somebody who owned slaves. This is my childhood. That's my mama's childhood. It's my grandmama's childhood. Why would you do that? Because there's documentation of devastation is crucial, but documentation can help us to lead out of devastating behavior. Because now that we've uprooted it, we've tossed it to the side, we've said what it is, we've noticed it. Matter of fact, I don't know personally, I don't care. I hope you keep those statues up because I want to be able to show people, hey, you guys see this person? Yeah, this person did blah, 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 blah. I actually want that. I don't mind that at all. But I get why people want it torn down. You said that's why Florida doesn't want accurate African American history taught. Yeah, I mean, even the fact that they want to call it African American, we want to make sure that we say, are aware of even that, right? Because that's documentation. Documentation tells us that nobody was African American until the 1970s, 1980s. Afro American kind of was a buzzword, right? But it wasn't used it wasn't used the way that they're using it today. It was something where people were talking about Afro American was actually something talking about let's go back to Africa at some point, even if you just go back on a pillage or for like a right to passage thing. I said pillage, a right to passage thing, or even or even if you're going back mentally, or even if you're talking about being indigenous, go back to your culture mentally, right? Figure out what the headdresses were mentally. See why not only are people who aren't part of your culture supposed to wear headdresses, but maybe you're not supposed to wear a headdress because you haven't been allowed to wear one yet, because you haven't gone through the rites of passage to wear one. And so when your own family teaching you lies and deceit, you become an outcast for not believing it, right? Why? Culture. See, if you're not part of a culture, you must comprehend every country comes with a culture. Every nation has a culture attached to it. That's why we keep talking about culture. If you're going to be a holy nation, then what's your holy culture? If you're going to be part of the kingdom of heaven, then there's a kingdom culture. I've heard people come on here before. It's wild. They'll say, "Well, you talking about the kingdom? The kingdom has no culture." That's part of your problem. You think that you're in a country, in a nation, in a kingdom, and you don't have to follow the culture that the king lays out. You're too used to democracy, even though democracy is not even what you're in technically, because it's not even in your constitution if you're in the West, right? But technically, you are in a democracy if you know what a democracy means. A small group of people who give you a little bit of information and they govern you by it, basically. And they all live together. That's really what a democracy actually was. How you doing, Domain? Right? How you doing, Billy Ray? See, but we don't recognize these terms. See, if you're going to build a nation, then you have to build a culture. No, right? Every nation has a tongue. That's why we've been focusing on language. See, we just think only about the physical tongue, right? But even the spiritual tongue has a culture attached. If you speak in any tongue, you speak in a different culture. If you speak a different dialect, you still speak within a culture, but you have a part of the culture that is specifically for this. It has adapted itself. It has become, in a sense, an adaptogen, if you will. Right? So when we're looking for documentation, it's important that we look for documentation and of destruction. It is documented. Now, I also must admit to you once again, see, we're talking about culture. I'm not in my culture, even just being West African, not just Ghanaian, not just Shwe, not just maybe even you want to consider me Ashanti Shwe, not just Yashraal. I'm literally saying, like, in West African culture, there's a term that's used for something that was bestowed upon me. I didn't ask for it. Well, I kind of wanted to be it, but I never asked for it. You don't obtain it that way. Somebody has to tell you that you are this. Somebody has to put the mantle on you. And I'm what's known as either a jelly, a griot, or even known as a jelly griot, which is a way of saying basically that you are a historian and you're supposed to be a teacher. You're supposed to basically be a library. they say that like basically a jelly kriat, if he dies or she dies, it's akin to a library being burned, right? Like when a jelly dies. So there are many jellies that are out there, some greater than others. I'm not even the greatest of jellies, right? You should probably do some research to find out, right? But they're supposed to be akin to a library dying, right? Documented. Even in Devestation, we were keeping up the jelly kriat thing, right? A lot of people don't. A lot of people just act like this stuff went away, right? Usually the common spelling is Jeligriot. Two different words, Jeligriot. Actually started off as a French word or French wording, because of, French people had slaves too, but it eventually has a different pronunciation now and has become something different for us. But jelly griot, and it's something that we use to be able to. Well, it's a mix of French and African languages, but nevertheless, so jelly griot basically is saying what, that I am somebody who has a responsibility to teach the history for my people, to know the history of my people, and you're supposed to do it in several ways. You're supposed to be able to do it through music, right? Or through the arts, you might say, even, right? But through music, through painted art or sculpting and things like that. You're supposed to be able to do it through dance. Can you tell people this dance is this, and this is why she's doing this or he's doing this? You're supposed to be able to do it through reading and writing. You're supposed to be able to do it through what's script documented. You're supposed to be able to do it by word of mouth, because some stories travel from generation to generation by word. See, and you live in a culture that says that the only way, and the reason why, and there's even more we can go into, but we live in a culture today, and we've taken on a culture that says if it's not imperial data, how you doing, Sister Sheen? Right? If it's not empirical data, we say that it's not worth listening to or watching, right? Jordan Peterson, who I actually like some of what he has to say, a lot of what he has to say, but he misses me when he starts getting into the West and empirical data. Why? Because in Jordan Peterson's mind and teaching, he comes from a Canadian, Western, European, English mindset that says that the empire is the reason, whether you like what they did or they didn't, or you don't, or you do not like what they did. He comes from a mindset that says that you have to be thankful and grateful for the empire, the British Empire, because whether you like what they did or didn't do, they're the reason why everybody got better. Amen, Anthony. Praise God. Thank you for that. Right. So you are so used to people around you saying, if it doesn't fit a British Empire mold, if it doesn't fit a Greco-Roman mold, if it doesn't fit our mold, our society, what we want, you're used to that. You're used to fighting through European prisms. So you'll go and look for the United States and say, the United States says this, and this is why thus and such happened or didn't happen. Because we have a what? We have the West tools, right? Hey, Grand Rising Sister Judith, how you doing? Gonna try and get you the recording soon, right? And how you doing, Shabbos? See, we come through. So watch this. Europeans want you to say slavery didn't exist. Europeans want you to think that slavery was a choice that, a choice given that was a easy choice. Well, if you don't want to be a slave, just die. So then we shouldn't be here, right? See, there's devastation, but we don't look for the documentation. See, they want you to look past documentation. There's an old saying, and unfortunately it's true, but there is an old saying that basically says you want to hide somebody from something from somebody, put it in a book. But the saying is really more dastardly because it's actually true as well. If you want to hide something from black folk, put it in a book. If you want to hide something from black folk, have black people listen to black people, because black people don't even want to listen to black people using the colonial or social construct. So a lot of people, because I dress the way that I do from head to toe, this is part of my attire. And so because I've decided to dress the way that I do culturally, there are some people that are my own people that will never hear me because they already know I'm coming through a prism that's not Eurocentric. And they will always have some doubt as far as the documentation. They won't look at me as a jelly or a library or something like that, right? And I'm not saying I'm all that, but I know what I know, right? And they won't look at me as that. Why? Because I'm not always giving empirical data. It has to be in a English library. It has to be something that somebody else would say and agree with. This is why I always have to come with stuff to say, hey, you can look at this person who was white that said blah, blah, blah. I don't do that for white people as much. I do that for our people more because our people have a mindset that says that if somebody else wrote it, it's better. Yeah, a lot of us did. I did. You were taught that. If you went to school in the West, that's what you were. Matter of fact, if you went to school pretty much anywhere, right? Unless you were in certain places to where the West doesn't have power. There are places like that. But for real, if you went somewhere that is influenced by Eurocentricity, that's what you learned. I gotta wait for somebody else to say it, and then I'll go along with it. So that's why some of the stuff I quote is going to be Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is considered to be one of the greatest minds. Now, Tony Robbins is not Imhotep. He's not Queen Khalifa. He doesn't have the power of Queen Nzinga. He doesn't have the wealth of Montezuma, the mindset and the wealth of Mansa Musa as well, right? But I might say something about him because somebody will say, "Oh," in your mind you go, "Oh, okay, he knows what he's talking about because the West says he does." I say Jordan Peterson, okay, he knows what he's talking about because the West knows he does, right? I say this president said, you go, "Oh, okay," you know. It's because of a mindset that's been held on us. And how you doing? Did I say hello, House of Locks? I'm not sure, but hey, how you doing? Right? We have to realize that out of the culture you come from, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that you think won't listen. Then there are some that won't listen because they think they're whites, as if that's a real thing, right? There's no such thing as a white person and all that stuff. But they think they've been taught that they are. But there are some people that want to listen because, and I don't have to give them that because they've come looking for a different perspective. You'd be surprised. They're looking for other documentation. They know the other documentation that I'm talking about. They live with it every day. You know what else we used to call presidents? We used to call them town destroyers, as far as my native side or indigenous side to the Americas. Like you say, native as if everybody can't be native to somewhere. Sorry, my indigenous side of the Americas. And how you doing, Sister Beverly? Thanks for being on. So we got to get this on track. We have to get this back in place. You have to recognize what's really, really going on. You have to get the thought process together. We have to get the mindset together. We have to get our hearts together, right? What is our heart? What is our mindset? Who will believe our report? So I want to give you some documentation of devastation, right? Some of it, I mean, some of you who've been with us, I'm not going to go really, really in depth today. So some of you already know exactly the places we're going to. But for example, Flavius Josephus or Flavius Josephus, Flavius Josephus. Right. And we still have his writings up. If you guys who are on Patreon, if you want to scroll through some of our posts, go on Patreon and look it up. We kept that stuff up there for you from the live session that we did on him a while ago. Right. Now, this is not his actual Hebrew name, but this is the name he was given once he was taken as a slave. Right. If you want to know if we're saying things that are true, he was an Israelite, right? In this Bible, in this Constitution that we carry, right? You can go look him up. You can go look him up for yourself. And when you look him up for yourself, you'll discover that he was an Israelite general, trained well, and he became a historian. And he's the reason why you even know about such Roman emperors like Caligula and Nero and things that he heard and read about. And he was literally under Emperor Vespasian, once Vespasian kind of took over and took command. Yeah, because that wasn't his Israelite name. Once again, he was taken as a slave. But if you look at what he writes out, he wrote out stuff. Everybody believes what he has to say. See, this documentation of devastation, right? What kind of mindset did you come from? A romantic mindset where Romans would believe. He documents this in his books. He talks about how he's upset and frustrated by it in some of the introductions to some of his books when he starts talking about our culture, right? He talks about how they would believe him back then when it came to Roman history because he was always on point. He was at the battles. He makes it a point to say, I was at these battles that I'm writing about. So he's talking about somebody that not only was an Israelite, but also was somebody that was at a lot of the battles that you guys may or may not have heard of in Roman story. He doesn't give Roman his story. He gives the Roman story. He doesn't say what the Romans want you to know about his story. He tells you what the Romans actually did in the real story. And he says, you guys will believe. Flavius Josephus writes out, he says, hey, you guys will believe me on this and this and this and this. But he says, man, when it comes to my people, and when I tell you about it, he says, you guys say I'm making stuff up, just like they do the same thing with us today. See, that little bit shows the documentation. Yeah, the programming could be a little deep. Yeah, for sure. See, so even in documentation, we have somebody who is highly regarded still to this day. There are very few people who are experts in Roman theology, Roman history, Roman battle history, whatever the case might be. There are very few people that know about Roman history and don't cite Flavius Josephus as somebody to listen to. But when we talk about the Bible, they say, don't listen to him about that. He's having a problem with that back then. See, we have documentation of devastation. That's a devastating mindset. To know, what you know, and to have somebody say, even back then, before Christianity was a thing, to have people that will turn into Roman Christians telling you that you don't know what you're talking about. You said, do I believe that Black people will one come together? Well, I believe we're coming together slowly right now. But do I believe that all Black people will come together? No, because not all skin folk is kinfolk. And not everybody are going to be able to get away from an emotional pull. No, not on Facebook. This I've been having issues getting on Facebook Live for some reason, but we're working on it. That's all I can say right now. That's why I've been putting some of the stuff up as far as the links later for you guys to click on the links. That's about the best I can do right now. I was even thinking about maybe doing something special for like people that are in the movement or something like that, and just doing something for you guys from time to time. But my time has been even more limited than usual, right? But it's not my goal. See, I've said this before. It's not my goal to save the world. That shouldn't be anybody's goal. I have a passion and a heart for my people, but my people all are allowed to have free will. So for those of you who we use, because you'd be surprised, once again, there are people who are part of this community, they have money and they believe. There are people who are part of this community who have resources and they believe, right? But our goal is not to try and save the world. Our goal is to be vessels and also show a way. I'm reporting, remember, right? I was ported here. I went somewhere else, was ported there. I realized it's better. I'm coming back to report. Y'all can come on the same ship and leave if you want. Right? There might have been a ship. I know not all of us came from Africa, right? But there might have been a ship that came and brought you over here, right? But it's definitely a ship that'll bring it back. Right? That's the goal. How you doing, yesterday? Yesterday, Israel. I forget Yehuda. I'm sorry. I should have the name. We're just talking. I should have the name earlier for Yehuda, but anyways, I apologize. Justin Berg, is it? Birch, how you doing, Justin? Thanks for being on as usual. So we have to have a mindset. We have to have a mindset change. And it has to be something that happens, right? It has to be a mindset change. It's not my goal to save it. Matter of fact, if it's not the Messiah's goal to change somebody's heart, if it's right, they have to have a change of heart based off of the environment. If it's not the Messiah's goal, right, it is not his will that any would perish but have everlasting life. However, it can't be his goal if he knows that you have free will. You see that? So I can go out into the streets and preach a message. I can go feed people and clothe people. I can make sure that I'm investing just as much, if not more so, than SOC is as a whole, as far as certain things, even financially sometimes. Like I can do those things. And I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm just saying, like, there's certain things that because of what I'm doing, I have to do those things, right? But it doesn't mean That just because I'm putting that in, my goal is not to say that every person I come across will believe. And that's what happens, right? So see, we have that documentation of devastation. We have a documentation already of devastating behavior that shows us that not everybody will believe, even way back then, even right after everybody scattered. See, Flavius Josephus, who I was talking about, when he was made a slave and became a slave of the emperor himself, he is somebody who was educated as an Israelite. And even Israelites today don't even know he exists and don't read his writings, or they themselves will say, the same thing that Roman said, well, he's correct about everything with Rome, but when it comes to us, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? There's documentation of devastation. So when we see that documentation back then, yeah, the spirit brings the fruits, right? The fruit of the spirit, really. If you have the spirit, then there's a fruit. There's one piece of fruit, right? Even with that, I'm not disagreeing. But Galatians, I'm talking about context of Galatians 5:22-23, right? If you have a spirit about you, right, then there should be 9 pieces of fruit that we have. It should be documentation, right? It's documented. If you have a spirit, we should see love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, being like Elohim, faithfulness, meekness, and temperance. And against such there is no law, meaning that if you live in those, then you live by law, because if you don't live against the law, then it means you live by the law. See, documentation of devastation. Why are we devastated? Somebody says, I'm going to go ahead and be in lasciviousness. I'm going to be in high-mindedness. I'm going to be in lust. I'm going to be in this. I'm going to be in that. Well, guess what? Now I'm dealing with what? Things that there's laws against. It's documented. The devastation to families that these things cause is documented. Right? What about these are things, once again, a lot of you've heard if you've been with us long enough. So I'm not really giving you anything brand new, but I just want you to look at it through that prism, right? There's documentation of this. And if we see what's documented, if we'll believe even what's documented, right, we might be able to get to the root of this issue. If we'll even just believe it, as Naruto would say, believe it. Some of y'all don't get that reference. Okay, amen, Draco. And we're praying right now. At Sham Yachava Barak Allah Draco right now. He lives at Amat, and we thank you for this right now. We thank you for being chit for his family, for his bits, for his house that the Son of Yah lives inside of, as well as it lives inside his heart, inside the kingdom that's in him. In Yahweh's name we pray, Amen. So yeah, so we have this stuff that we just don't want to be honest about, but it's documented. You say your daughter watches it? Yeah. Right. So it's documented. It's documented. Right. Once something else is documented, once again, a lot of you know these things, right? What is documented? Documented as far as what? The doctrine of discovery. That's a document. Right? That's a document. You said respecting the Naruto reference. Yeah, that's documented. Right? But what if something else is documented? The doctrine of discovery. What's the doctrine of discovery? Been around since 1452, was made official in 1493. Doctrine of discovery says that if we come across a place that doesn't have a white Christian male on it, then we can say we discovered it. So if you're the first white Christian male to get to a country, it's yours. That comes from the Pope. That's devastating, right? Because if documentation of devastation, because if I can discover your land, even though you live on it, it means you're not a human being. It's our pleasure, right? If I can discover something you live on, then it means you're not a human being. Sounds like cheating. Yeah, I mean, it's even more perverse than cheating. It's straight up denying your humanity. I have to change the definition of a human being in order for the doctrine of discovery to be there. So when somebody says that there are people out there that don't even think you're a human being, people say, "Oh, you're going too far." No, we're not. Doctrine of discovery, documented, documentation of devastation. So when I say I want out of a system that doesn't treat me like a human being, somebody gets upset. And by the way, why did it become official in 1493? They were using it. The Pope was using it since 1452. Why did it become official in 1493? Well, in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue to be able to start getting slaves. If you don't believe that, look at what happened in 1491. Queen Isabella and her husband Ferdinand have come together. They defeat the last Moorish king. They go straight to the Pope. They say, hey, we'd like to look for the land of Asheroth, which they're looking for a specific tribe of Negroes who basically are, now we'd call them Sephardic Jews, or they look like Sephardic Jews. So they're looking for Israelites, and they're trying to make slaves out of them because they know about the curse. The Pope says, no problem, as long as you get me some of those slaves, go get them. Christopher Columbus, who had told him that he knew about the land of Asheroth, he goes ahead based off of at least 10 years. We know at least documented that he was traveling with Africans since 1482. So we know for at least 10 years, he had known about how to get over to this place. And we know it even more so because he takes a Hebrew interpreter over there with him. And when they get over there, they say they discovered the land that these Taínos, or some people would even say Arawaks or different people, but these Taínos, these people we would call now today Haitians and Dominicans, they go over there and they take their land. So your baby just said that. Mm-hmm. He said that one island isn't going to let outsiders step on it. They will end you quickly. You know, but this is what's going on. Right? Like this was what was going on. And he brought a Hebrew interpreter over with him. He knew, right? But they came and they discovered where you were based off of what they knew about you. This lie that Christopher Columbus, remember, he's documented. See, documented. He said she's 13. Amen. She's wise. Right? Remember, this is documented. So in our mind, we think, oh no, this is just random stuff. No, it is documented. It is official. Right? We know for a fact that they knew who you were. He brought a Hebrew interpreter. Why would he bring a Hebrew interpreter with him to a place that they didn't speak Hebrew? If they didn't know, if they had no knowledge of who the people were already traveling to different places. Well, that's what they tell us. But see, what's also documented in the same journal is that Christopher Columbus told his men to tell a lie and say that they were in India. He knew that they weren't in India. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, little sis. Right? He knew they weren't in India. How you doing, Set Apart? Thanks for being on. What's constitutional? That's what's up. Right? But they knew where they were. They knew where they weren't. But they discovered what was already written in 2nd Esther chapter 13, verse 40 through 45. Why? Because the Pope allowed the doctrine of discovery. Now, somebody would say, so once again, somebody would say, how do you strip somebody of their humanity? And in that sense, if they knew that they were Alpha or Hebrew or Yashil or Israel, then how do you strip somebody of their biblical birthright? See, we think it's just something random or blah, blah. No. Like, it is possible when we look at it correctly. It is possible. Not only possible, not only feasible, but now we see it's accurate to say that they actually had to strip them of their birthright in order to make them a slave. They knew who they were. Spanish Inquisition, when it happens, don't forget that the Israelites, right, were forced to convert. They nowadays call them Sephardic Jews. If you ever read about Sephardic Jews are described as being tall, black, very much so into women, right? So they weren't back and forth in between because the culture they were in, they went back and forth. They were very so much into women. They were highly into the law. They wore hoodies. They played music. They put poetry over music. You call that rap today, right? They did a lot of stuff. They lived in ghettos, which you still live in ghettos, right? They were called negros, because negro is one of the most ancient ways of saying black people that existed, even within West Africa, way back, even before slavery, they used to say it. Negro land. They went looking for people who scattered during the Spanish Inquisition who said that they were Israel. We're glad you discovered it too. Hopefully everything worked out for your trip and everything. Been praying for it. I don't know what the situation ultimately happened. Hopefully you were able to do everything you wanted to do or going to do everything you're going to do. I can't remember when you said you were trying to roll out, if you even said it, but been praying about it. You said if a person doesn't know it's their right to work, it's there, right? The work of striping. Oh, it becomes automatic. And how you doing, Heavy MC? Right? How you doing, Boss Kid? If I didn't say so already. So you got to be in a position, right, to realize they knew what they were doing. They knew who they were going after. Remember, Queen Isabella is like a granddaughter of people that fought in the Crusades. She looked up to people who fought in the Crusades. Why did the Crusades start? Documented. It's documented. What happened with the Crusades? Europeans were killing Europeans at such a rate that the Pope was losing power because he's the king of kings. So he's supposed to be the king of the European kings. Europe, remember, the word Europa literally just used to mean anything that belonged to Rome. Thank you, Brother Anthony. Appreciate it. So as the king of Europa, the king of those that used to belong to Rome, he's the Roman Catholic Church head. He's over the Roman Empire. He's losing power. So he says, hey, you see those black and brown people over there? They're all infidels. The kingdom of heaven belongs to us. Let's go over there and get it. That's doctrine of discovery. Coming from the head of the Roman Catholic Church. How you doing, King Wins? We have a right. That's what it's saying. We have the right to take over your land because there's no white Christian male there. So if we find it, it is ours. We discovered it. And somebody says, well, see, you're going too far. No, I'm just talking about documentation. And see, people are still trying to run away from it rather than say, wow, that was bad. Like we could just go, wow, that was bad. Move on to the next thing. Right? Instead, it's, no, you don't comprehend, or everybody did it, or it was just the times. No, it wasn't just the times. There were people that knew better. The Pope knew better. The Pope knew that they weren't the chosen people. He started a whole war called the Crusades. And the people that fought against him, by the way, people that we look up to and try to act like they had nothing and they were just these people and blah, blah, whatever. Like, let's not act like Solomon was, that he wasn't wrong either on the other side. There's a spirit on both sides that caused this thing to happen, fighting over territory that didn't belong to either one of them. This thing was thought out. This thing was about land. This thing was about power. This thing was about authority. It was about resources. It was about it was about like these roads. Like when you look at Revelation and you see those 7 assemblies, we don't comprehend those 7 assemblies. Ephesus, Thyatira, Phrygia, Smyrna. Philadelphia. All these places like that, right? These places were all on the road. They were all on trade routes. So people that were in these specific places, these were trade hubs on the trade route. How you doing, Sister Saul? Right? These are places that were there on different trade routes. So these trade routes caused us to be in, different positions and things like that. These trade routes. So this word that was supposed to be given, right? John, who was on the Isle of Patmos, was sending this letter not that far from these trade routes. And so these 7 assemblies were on different parts of the trade route that they could get the message out. So to get it to these 7 assemblies was to get the message out to a whole bunch of people. These 7 assemblies represented what was really going on worldwide. And if we could get this together and spread that message, right, then we can make sure that Yahshua could return. Matthew chapter 24, verse 14. See, once you see what's documented in the devastation, you were technically knocked out. You see, that's what we're dealing with. You said the natives were all people of different colors. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm not dealing in colorism. I'm telling you, but I guess you're saying as far as what the people try to do, sure. They come in different colors, just like they come in different colors in Africa. But there are certain places that we know people were certain things as well. Like we're not going to deny that there were not a lot of people in California, the Khalifa people, and what they look like as well. But sure, people come in different colors all the time. You don't measure melanin from the outside in, you measure it from the inside out. But what I'm talking about specifically in this regard, as far as where I'm talking about today, if you're talking about those who were in Israel, even, in the 1920s, there's videos out there. We have one on our TikTok pages if you want to scroll through some. It's an older video now, but we have videos on there showing you what Israelites looked like in the 1920s. Remember, in Kemet, or now we call Egypt, because the people that are there who are in charge, they're not Kemetic, they're Egyptian, even though Kemetic people still live in the area. But a lot of them went down to Kush and other places now. So if you want to find the people, they always say, well, nope, none of us know how to build this stuff. Nobody knows how they built it. It must have been an alien. No, none of you built it because you weren't there. But documented, 1940s, right? Israel is given power by the Rothschilds, who worked with America, who worked with England, who worked with France, who worked with Russia, right? You call them the Allied powers, who fought against the wicked Axis powers, even though corporations were making money off of both sides, not just war corporations, but even corporations like you call Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, the whole reason Fanta exists is because Coca-Cola was doing business in Nazi Germany and elsewhere. All of a sudden, when you guys started saying they couldn't do it because you wanted to go ahead and win the war, they kept people over there, but they started making Fanta. So the reason why you drink Fanta is owned by Coke, is because Fanta, they started making different fruit drinks. Remember, Cola and Coca-Cola used to actually be cocaine in cola, right? Before that, it was cola, wine, and some other ingredients, right? Then they couldn't do the cola and wine, or the cola, the cocaine, and the wine. So then they got rid of the wine, and they gave you bubbles, right? They gave you bubbly water, and then they put the cola and the cocaine in that, and then put a couple extra things in that. Then they couldn't give you the cocaine because people started realizing the cocaine does not give the effects of healing that they thought they did. It can give some, but not all these. It was not a officinalis they were treating it like, right? So now all of a sudden they said, okay, what do we do? We'll take out the cocaine. We'll make a formula that makes them feel like they're getting high, which is where you guys get that Coke formula from. They still, by the way, bring in, or at least they're supposedly they stopped. But Coca-Cola for a long time was still bringing in shiploads of Coke, even like to the 80s and 90s officially, until finally somebody said, y'all can't do that anymore. But anyways, we don't know our story. Anyways, let me stay on track. Thank you, Holy Spirit. So 1940s, the person who's the prime minister of Egypt, not Kemet, Egypt, says, or the Israelites, they just finished winning a real quick war backed by all these countries and nations that, we're going to help them and help them to make money so they could make money as well. And then basically they come to Israel. Israel goes to Kemet. Israel goes to Egypt. And when Israel goes to Egypt, what happens? He goes to Egypt. The prime minister goes there and he says, hey, you need to recognize us. Maybe he didn't go physically, but they sent word, right? But nevertheless, we want Egypt to recognize this new Israel as an actual nation, as a sovereign nation. This is documented. Once again, documentation of devastation. You can see what's happened. The prime minister of Egypt says, we won't do it. We won't recognize you. Israel basically says, why? What you tripping on for? What you mad for? And he says what? He said his next words are, well, when you left, you were black. But now that you come back, you are white. In other words, even the person who's not even Kemetic knows enough of the story of the Israelite, even the story of them in the 1920s still, that we have documented on film, on wax, as we would used to say, right? He says, we know that the people that are there, whether Palestinian or Israel or otherwise, they all looked a certain way. And somebody would say, well, they come in all colors and this and that. True. But we're not going to act like the majority of people there did not look a certain way. So if they looked a certain way when they left, but now all of them come back and they don't look the same, common sense, or at least what sense that should be common to us should say, they can't be the same people. I know people act like that's not true and this and that or whatever, but look. Even if I have, and I'm married to, finest a black woman there is, right? Even if, I won't even use that because that's disrespectful. Let's say that there's a black man that's married to a white woman and they have children. their children will still show signs of being their father. So even if their father and mother leave and the children were to come back, those children should look like the mother and father, should they not? And even if some of the children married white, social colonial construct over and over again, at some point you would think that some of the children still might marry somebody else who looks like their father. And so at least if they come back, shouldn't some of them still look like what left out? You're telling me all of them are going to look white? When the more melanated the gene is, the more dominant the gene is. You're telling me none of the dominant gene is going to still be there? None of the shape of the nose is still going to be there? You're telling me none of the hair is ever going to show up? Because even if it misses a generation or a couple generations, it's going to pop up eventually. You can tell sometimes. We're just going to say that everybody is non-melanated at all. Like the non-melanated recessive gene is going to be more powerful than the dominant melanated gene. Yeah, even if you're fair or pale or whatever. I don't even like to use the term fair, because fair, what makes you more fair because of being white, right? But I give it, I'm sorry, you know how my mind works. Hopefully you don't take any offense, right? My mind, I get on small details. But I'm just saying, I'm not going to like, yeah, exactly. Cat Williams' voice, yeah. Whose white baby is that? Right? That one might be mine, right? He said, but that one is not. And I'm not going to use all the descriptives that he used, but right, like it's very clear. But people want us to believe that we're wrong. They call you a reverse racist because you simply are looking at documentation. Remember, I said earlier, documentation is not only what's written on paper. Right? I was talking to somebody the other day and reminding them that if somebody will say that farmer can't read or write, not so. Well, they can't read or write. They can't read or write words, but they can read the land, and they can decide to write here. I'm going to make sure this is going to be. They write with the seed. This is going to be an apple tree. This is going to be where the corn grows. This is going to be where I rotate my crop. See, you can't read or write like they can. Right? You can't read or write like they can. They're better at reading than you are, depending on what the environment. They can't speak the way that I can speak. Yeah, they can. What do you mean? Well, you might not know to give a hug. You might not know how to read a love language. You might not know how to read somebody's body language, even though there's no tears flowing from their eyes. That person is devastated right now. See, they know how to document things that you don't know how to document. And that's the problem, is we're so into, once again, a certain type of data. But we don't think about the fact that if anything is this type of data, and I don't even know if I'm spelling it right, y'all, I'm being honest with you, but y'all will get the point. The bottom word I know is spelled right. Right? But see, we don't get the point. That you think because you've been taught that if it's empirical, right, then it has to be correct. But empirical just means it's from an empire. That's all it's saying. That's all they're saying. Right? That's all they're saying. Right? They're saying that if our nation doesn't approve it, if our nation doesn't approve it, then it doesn't count. That's all they're telling you. Right? You were raised off of empirical data. So somebody tells you something, and in the empire, anything that will come against the empire will fall, or will cause the empire to fall. That's why, once again, we're talking about the doctrine of discovery. Remember, we're talking about that and how you had to take away somebody's humanity to be able to say you discovered where they live. Well, guess what? Look up the word human in Black's Law Dictionary. Now, human means humus man, dark, rich, nutrient earth with a spirit inside of it. A human technically is the only lawful thing. So all of us technically should want to make sure that we give props to the Most High for giving us melanin of any kind, because if we don't have any hue at all, then we're not deserving of having a spirit inside of us. Even people who have albino suffer from albinism or albinoism. I'm not sure which one, but I guess albinism. Like even people who suffer from that. Right? Even people who suffer from that, guess what? Guess what? Like they still have some kind of melanin, or else they can't have a soul, according to scientific regard. But the word human, look up human in law, in Western law. What do they say a human is? They say that a human is they say a human is a monster. Oh, because if you're willing to deal into your dark hue, you become monstrous to the system. Right? You become monstrous to the system. How you doing, Juanetta? Right? I didn't write that, but it's documented. Remember, we talk all the time about the burden of proof. The burden of proof is not on us, it's on those that came before us. Always get the burden of having to prove something off of yourself. Y'all still stop trying to prove it yourself. Go and look for people that wrote it out. And if somebody doesn't believe what somebody else said about it, then guess what? Don't take it personally then, because it's not that they don't believe you, they don't believe the person who said it, who did it. Right? Don't take it personally. Don't be offended. Right? Yeah, don't be offended when you try to tell them that you live in a corporation. And they say, "Oh no, I don't live in a corporation. What are you talking about? How dare you say that I live in a corporation?" When all you got to do is look up to be able to see if you live in a corporation. It's right there. (28) USC 3002 15A. Right? Now read A, B, C if you want, but write an A in A section. It tells you straight up, you are not in the country. You singing British songs. You don't even know they're British songs. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. For thee I sing. Right? Talking about land with your father. No, that's not your father's. And it's not even a country. And you sing in a country that you think you don't belong to. But why would you be singing an English song if you're an American? If this is actually your country. See, this is not your country. It was always a territory. They fought supposedly for freedom to be able to get sovereignty, but you still had places like Virginia or a commonwealth. Commonwealth is not the same as a state. You think that there's 50 states, but there's a couple of commonwealths floating around, aren't there? And you don't even know that a state is a country. And if you're in a commonwealth, the wealth is supposed to be common to all people. So if it's common to all people, it's supposed to be a kingdom. It's documented. You see? Once again, if you want to hide the truth from a people, especially from our people, unfortunately, hide it in documentation. There you go, Massachusetts, another commonwealth, right? If you're in a commonwealth, and here's the thing that's interesting, in the commonwealth, the wealth is never common. The knowledge is common, but you have to find where it's written. It's supposed to be common law that everybody can get wealth. But why is it that people in Massachusetts are trying to figure out how to get $3 and $4 million homes that in other places you can get, for $50,000 to $100,000? Why is it like that in New York? $8 million homes. Because the knowledge is not common, which means, or the intimacy with the information, with the intelligence is not common. You don't know where to look for it. Other people, they live it every day, so they don't have to look as much. That's one of the reasons why they forbade us to read as slaves, for sure. It was forbidden that you would know where to look for the information. Because you know what happens when you get information? Information makes you hungrier. Information is contagious. You get some information, you start living the information, people around you are like, I want to live that too. Now you say, well, you got to read this document too. Well, DC is actually a territory, but it's not a territory. If you look in Black's Law Dictionary, look up the definition of Washington, D.C. You got to remember Washington, D.C. How was Washington, D.C. made? What was the purpose of it? Hey, how you doing, Yasanma? And today we're talking about what? Documentation of devastation. D.C. was a place owned by Maryland and Virginia, right? The first president who's going to set precedent. He asked Maryland and Virginia to give up the land. Now, what is the first president? Really, technically, if you use George Washington, he's not the first president, but usually we start with him. So let's just go ahead and start with him. If George Washington is your first president, right? If that's who you deem as your first president, because that's what you were taught, right? Especially with him moving the Constitution into more of an actual Moorish, like so that's really a sultan's or a Muslim constitution. That's what happened. As much as you think it's a Christian nation, it's a Christian nation that follows a Muslim constitution because Masons don't care about any of that stuff. And he was a Mason. So your constitution is Masonic. They don't care about your religiosity. That's why you guys argue more about religion and they use it against you. They know that they know as Masons that they can get you to argue over things that you don't even study. Oh yeah, we know Chicago was built by a Haitian, for sure, Jean Baptiste, right? It's even called the second city because the first city got messed up, jacked up, right? And so they literally just built another city on top of it, you know. So you could actually just look underneath Chicago to see who you are, but they would never tell you to read underneath your city. The foundation of your city is you. If you're a Chicago person, but you'd rather let your blood spill and seep down to the second city than let your knowledge seep down to the second city. If we're not careful, right? Literally a cover up, right? Or Seneca Falls, or the river that's right to it. You guys know it as that river or the water that's right next to. I always forget the name of this place. I always remember Seneca Falls, but I can't remember what they call it now. Even when I go there. Famous New York park, sorry. You had the something Park 5, right? What is that park? Somebody help me. I always forget the name of it. Central Park, thank you. Central Park. That was Seneca Falls. Black city, black neighborhood. Right next to it, the water that's there, they just covered that up. That was a black neighborhood too, a black city as well, built by black hands. You just pour some water over it. Before that, they moved the natives out of it. George Washington pushed them out of there. But anyways, going back to Washington, D.C., right? This is documentation of devastation. We know this, right? But George Washington, he asked for Maryland to give us some land, for Virginia to give us some land. They made it a square, right? And they called it Washington, D.C., Washington District of Columbia, right? But before we get to Washington District of Columbia is called that because Washington is supposed to be the father of your nation. So he's the modern Osiris. And Columbia is supposed to be the goddess. She is what? Columbia, she's on top of the Congress building. She's supposed to be Isis. The story of Osiris and Osiris goes like this. Osiris was the head, or at least one of the head neters, right? But somebody who had a lot of power. At the time, he gets killed by the other neters. You call them gods, deities, spirits, etc. He gets killed by the other neters. They cut his body apart. They put it in all different places, so that and spread him apart so that he can't be brought back together and come back to life. His wife, who's half woman, half bird, right? This is why Heru is a falcon, right? Or he can turn into a falcon depending on your belief system. But that's why he's a bird, because his mother was half bird. Okay, so Osiris is somebody who is basically Osiris. He's died. He's brought apart. His wife Isis is flying around. She's getting worried. She can't find her husband. Then she starts seeing pieces of a body all over the place and realizes, oh, that's her husband's body. She puts together all of her husband's body, except she can't find his penis. She can't find his phallus. So when she can't find his phallus any longer, she basically makes what you call an obelisk, which is a dildo, basically. A mock penis, a mock phallus. She puts it in place of that. And either the story goes, once it was connected, he either became a he either became a zombie or he basically was dead, but he could procreate still, right? Which is something that actually human beings can do even after they're dead, depending on what's going on or whatever. Like depending on where the blood is, still they can actually still get an erection, stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's disgusting, but there have been people who have gotten impregnated by corpses or whatever. One woman in particular just got arrested recently, so it is possible, right? But anyway, sorry about that if that's too much information, but just trying to tell you it is something that's possible, right? But nevertheless, so the story goes, she rode this fake phallus, not a real one, but a fake phallus, and she was impregnated. Whether you believe he was dead or whether you believe he was a zombie, she rode this thing, right? And then she gets pregnant, she gives birth to Heru, and Heru, who's a falcon or whatever now, is supposed to be somebody that people look at it for, like the Eye of Horus or things like that, right? Now, George Washington, he has an obelisk, and his seed, testicles, right, is in the ground. Now, why does he have an obelisk? Because George Washington's body fell apart, but especially his phallus. What the thing that couldn't be found, it was messed up on George Washington. Why? Because he died of syphilis. So he died of syphilis because he was sleeping around with all those women. Remember, he was the commander in chief. British commander in chiefs not only would have sex with slaves and things like that, or sex with people that they captured, but also the commander in chief would have sex with some of his other military members' wives. They wild out. It was part of his right to basically kind of pick them out. And even though people didn't like it, if you wanted to go ahead and one day maybe become a commander in chief yourself, that's what you had to do. So George Washington was the commander in chief for the what becomes the United States or whatever, right? And so he's doing all types of stuff, wilding out sexually. And he married his wife Martha, who was passing for white. So even the colorism thing starts moving into this discussion. But he marries her. Why? Because she had just as many slaves as he did. So when you go to Mount Vernon over there in Virginia, his place where he resided at, you'll see, that's the reason he got all that land, was because he married his wife who passed for white, who didn't love the blackness in herself. A lot of stuff going on, right? But anyways, so George Washington, you had his obelisk. His seed is in the ground, right? But his obelisk sticks out the ground. His seed, testicular region, is in the ground, but the obelisk sticks up. And above George Washington, above everything in Washington, D.C., on top of the Congress building, is supposed to be what? Columbia, who's this new Isis who walks around and flies around. She gets impregnated by George Washington, lands back on the Congress building. Everybody that comes out of her is Heru, or her children. So Congress is your modern day Horus. They literally just took one story and took it and put it in this, and then told you that they separated church from state. And you're so busy worrying about, so the rights of the church are separated from the rights of the state, or the rights of religiosity, but you don't even realize that you worship a Kemetic deity now cloaked in Eurocentricity, right? So that's Washington, D.C., why it's named that. Now, what was I talking about as far as it being a territory? George Washington says that he wants this territory, and he puts out a bid to everybody, including Thomas Jefferson. He puts out a bid. Basically, he says, can anybody, he puts out a competition and says, hey, this is how much money I'm willing to pay whoever it is that can come up with the White House. Can basically come up with this house we're going to put in the middle of the manor, and we want it to be white, and we're going to have slaves on it. You didn't know that, but if you go over to Washington, D.C. today, you get off on the Orange Line at a place called Foggy Bottom, you'll come up to George Washington University. And guess what Foggy Bottom used to be? That was the main place that a lot of slaves lived. They called it Foggy Bottom because it's swampland. They talk about all those mosquitoes over in Africa, but I promise you, I never got bit by a mosquito in Africa. Never. I'm not saying they don't exist, because they do. Obviously, in certain places they're harmful, but I've never got bit by one over there. However, I've been bitten many times in Washington, D.C. Many times, right? Because it's swampland, right? So he asked for somebody could they put a house in the middle of swampland, and the part that was really foggy bottom, that's where the slaves lived. So when you come up in the George Washington University now, right where George Washington University Hospital is, you will walk into where the slaves used to be, but it doesn't look anything like it to the untrained eye, but there's still little signs around if you look carefully, excuse me, right? So you have this territory that he built up to be slave land. Remember, George Washington, Virginia slave owner. Let's go through your list of presidents. John Madison. George Washington, Virginia slave owner. John Adams worked for Washington, Federalist Party, Virginia slave owner. Then you have who's next? So Washington, Adams. I got to start revisiting my presidents. I've been slipping lately. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, which, by the way, Jefferson will come in, and he actually was second on the list. He lost out on being able to create the White House to the person who won. He came in second. So when Washington comes in there, I'm sorry, Jefferson is also a Virginia slave owner, right? Go to Monticello to see how he lived and how he treated his slaves, and how he had slave Bibles and ripped the pages out of the Bible that said to treat, slaves as human beings and stuff like that, right? So Thomas Jefferson, when he gets in there, he actually rebuilds the inside of the White House. So some of the things Thomas Jefferson was very eclectic, and they said he was an inventor, but he wasn't that great at it, but he fancied himself to be an inventor, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that's weird in the White House that you'll see, even in his own house in Monticello, that's really odd, right? But he wanted his inventions and his stuff to be present. So he literally redoes some of the stuff in the White House that still exists to this day. Some made it through the fire that would happen later on in the War of 1812 and stuff. But Thomas Jefferson is a Virginia slave owner. Right after him is going to be Madison, a Virginia slave owner. Right after him is going to be Monroe, a Virginia slave owner, right? Once you get out of that generation, you get to John Quincy Adams, who is John Adams' son. John Quincy Adams basically worked for who? Virginia slave owners. And then after, even though people talk about how he did the whole thing in court to try and help those people who were on Armistead and stuff like that, but if you lived in the White House, you must recognize that it was a slave land. They had overseers. Everybody, I don't care what they say about them, everybody who was there, at least the first 18 presidents, at least, they all had to have slaves, because in order to be in the White House, you had to have slaves. Period. You could not live in the White House and not have slaves. Impossible, right? So you keep on going. Who's the seventh president? That's a Tennessee slave owner who I believe went to school in Virginia, but is a Tennessee slave owner. That's Andrew Jackson. And then you go back, and then after that's Martin Van Buren. Now, he was a New York slave owner who was Dutch, whose first language was Deutsch, right? And didn't speak English. The only presidents whose first language wasn't English. But then after that, you start going back to Virginia slave owners. So Virginia and Maryland gave up land for slaving to happen for the president of the United States and anybody else who would eventually live on it, Congress included. And when you look up the Black's Law Dictionary definition, once again, documentation of devastation is documented. And when you look up what happened, so basically, when you look at the Black's Law Dictionary, it started out by saying it's a territory that George Washington got. It was given by Virginia and Maryland. It says eventually Virginia asked for the land back, so now it's not a territory anymore. So, because, or at least part of it can't be considered to be a territory, but at the same time, it's governed by Congress. Congress has no power outside of Washington D.C., but Washington D.C. is subservient, or I'm sorry, what's the word they use? Washington D.C. is subject to Congress. Right? Kingdom terminology. Washington, D.C. is subject to Congress. And therefore, since Washington, D.C. is subject to Congress, they say, well, you got to, what is it? Washington, D.C. is subject to Congress. Therefore, since it's subject to Congress, I'm sorry, what was the next part? Oh, yeah. So therefore, it has to listen to it. So if Congress says that Washington, D.C. has to remain, Virginia can't take the land back, even though Virginia said, we don't give you guys permission anymore to have the land. They can't, because Virginia has decided to be part of the federal government, or at least have to be attached to it. They are United States. They have to protect the public. So whatever Congress says to do for the public, they have to do to protect the public, which means that even though we don't want you to have this land, we can't take it from you, which is why anybody in D.C. who owns a house, they'll tell you that they don't own the land. Not just because it belongs to the federal government, it technically belongs to Virginia. You owe Virginia the land. And technically, it's subject to Congress. Congress gets to tell you what to do with the land. So you can't own what's not yours. How you doing, Sister Lorraine? You cannot own what's not yours. You see? You said they had a slave Bible on display for those that want to fact check. Yeah, you can see that. In matter of fact, they have one in Washington, D.C., but they also have the slave Bible there in Monticello, in Virginia, where Thomas Jefferson lived. I believe they have one in Mount Vernon, where George Washington lives still, but I don't think you can. I don't think they have it on display for you to be able to see. Yeah, but you got to know who you're serving. right? So this is what Washington, D.C. is. So now at the end of the definition in Black's Law Dictionary, it will say, so now Washington, D.C. is no longer a territory. So it starts off by saying it's a territory in the definition, but now it says it's not a territory. So what is it? Well, it's subject to Congress, but Congress has no jurisdiction outside of the territory. Right. But it's not a territory. Right. So then what is Congress? And if you look up where the United States Corporation, remember we already showed you 28 USC 300215A that the United States is a corporation. If you look up where the corporation's office is located, it's located where? Washington, D.C. So we have a territory that's not a territory, that's over Congress, that has no power outside of the non-territory, that focuses on making sure that the corporation United States that's in the territory, that's not a territory, gets to tell you what to do. That's devastating behavior, isn't it? That sounds like somebody who's not you were born and raised in VA. Yeah, I went to high school in VA, right? That's kind of devastating. That's devastating behavior, isn't it? Like, where do we start with that? That's it's designed to be so confusing that you can't keep up with it, if you notice, right? Here's another documentation to prove that. Willie Lynch letter. He said specifically, he said that anytime somebody learns more about themselves, he said the more you learn about yourself, he said if any of these slaves learn about themselves, we have to introduce new stuff that's not even real to them. He said if we can introduce more things that are not real to them, right? He said if we could introduce more than, by the way, where did he give that speech at? Jamestown, Lynchburg. Willie Lynch, his cousin invited them from the West Indies. He said we got to introduce more things to you to be more confusing to them so that they will not be able to recognize and realize who they are and where they come from. He said, and then swords getting pulled out of their behinds to keep the truth hidden. Yeah. He said every time that they find tangible evidence of who they are, in other words, it's something that allows them to touch who they are. Whenever they find something they can touch that says, ooh, that's me, he said we immediately have to flood them with more different things to be able to get them on track of who they are. Right? Isn't that interesting that as you were having an awakening, now people are more confused about Israel after the Kanye thing, because Kanye now has gone back into whatever he needed and he's married right back into the same class of people, and he's got, his stuff going back together, and he's made sure, like all the stuff that happened. Adidas isn't bad mouthing them anymore. Like, all the stuff that happened, like what happened overnight. He gonna go back and make some more albums, do some things like that. Everybody forgot. They messed up Kyrie's whole life and livelihood. They tried to make him pay hundreds of thousands of dollars because he put a link up for something. It's the same thing. It's documentation of devastation. See, they never forget certain things, even though they do, but they tell you to forget. But there's certain things you should never forget. Forgive, but don't forget. And I didn't say don't forget as far as don't see if they're covered. Don't bring it up every time. You don't have to meet a white person and be like, I'm trying to teach my child that now, right? He learned something, and then I got to be careful that he's not walking around every time you see. And he does pretty well, with that. Sometimes he'll slip up. Like if I mention something, oh, I don't like blah, blah. So you teach him, right? But I got to teach you the truth. But I also have to teach you that it's not a representation of all colonial construct white people that this stuff happened. But yeah, it happened. Right? But I'm not going to say that every single person I run into. That's why people got a problem. See, it's all or nothing mentality has got a lot of people jacked up. It's all or nothing. Oh, the MK Ultra thing? Yeah, for sure. For sure, right? So you got to realize, but it's documented. This is documented behavior of devastation. And see, if we notice that it's been documented from ancient Rome, ancient Greece, even ancient Kemet. Yes. We got some Kemetic stuff in this that's jacked up. I just told you some of it about Isis and Osiris and Heru, right? With Columbia, Washington, and the modern day horrors. So guess what we got to do? We have to start saying, okay, if we see that they've been doing the same thing over and over again, and our whole thing is to just keep saying, well, it happened. Well, it just happened. Well, it just happened. Well, it just happened. After a while, like, well, it just happened can't be the mantra anymore. That's got to turn into it happened. What are we going to do to make sure it stops happening? We're not going to be able to change the system. The system, the beast is what it is. The beast is prophesied, you know. If the beast is prophesied by the Most High, he's telling you it's coming, whether you like it or not. You can't change prophecy. I mean, you can pray for it to be delayed, possibly. You can pray it, but the prophecy has already been prophesied. This is not stopping. This is what it is. It's coming. It's rolling downhill. It's going to keep getting bigger. The world is getting better at worlding. They worlding out. Don't be surprised when evil gets more evil. Evil going evil. You got to decide if you're going to be righteous. Evil going evil. Evil going to do what it do. Right? Like Jamie Foxx said when he was playing Ray Charles, I'm going to make it do what it do, baby. Right? Evil going to do what it do. Yeah, it's our turn to end the insanity. Right? So we have to start looking for those things and seeing, okay, if that's been over and over and over again, what do we do to come out of it? Once again, I'm not here believing that every single person is going to agree with every single word that I speak. Every single person is going to be down for every single thing that I say. Every single person is going to have the faith that I have. It's not supposed to be like that. Every single person is going to be a confidant. It's not supposed to be like that. Every single person is going to be a constituent. It's not supposed to be. Every single person is going to be a comrade. It's not. My goal is not to try and save the world. Those who choose to go through the straight and narrow, right? So you got to look at the documentation and see if those who have chosen to come out of it. Because see, here's the thing we don't talk about. Olaudach Equiano, Olaudah, last name Equiano, who literally came out of slavery, bought his way out, read a Bible for the first time, and realized that his suppressed memories of being a child were actually him living by Israelite ways over in Africa, over in the West Africa, over as Igbo, more than likely. Some people say Sierra Leone. Either way, somebody who kept Israelite values in chattel slavery times. He found a way out. See, his way out. See, this is when it gets interesting because people don't want to talk about this part of documentation and coming out of the devastation. But his way out was this. He used this documentation to realize what his childhood was. To go back to what he was, he used this. And we got people out here talking about how non-real it was. Documentation. See, that's why I said documentation is not just empirical. What the empire says it should be, right? Toussaint, am I saying it right? Toussaint de Louverture or Louverture Toussaint? I'm sorry, I'm having a moment here. But Toussaint, he said he read this. And when he read this, he read about Moses. And he said, oh, maybe I can be that for my people. Harriet Tubman started doing what she did, and her people knew about this and said, hey, maybe she's our Moses. Like, we have this weird thing of acting like this. Nobody cared about this documentation or ever used it. Thank you, Toussaint Louverture. All right. Yeah. Right. What about, watch this, in Savannah, Georgia, right down the way from a Black or Israelite, technically an Israelite church. Yeah, Israelites who got free and built the church and wrote ancient Hebrew on it. Wrote like a cursive version of Avda on their pews, right? And so those people, right? Those people wrote that. Still there today. You can go there and visit it still to this day, right? Go now, not too far, and from there, in the middle of a little, I don't know what you would call it, not a cul-de-sac or whatever, but like they have a place. Basically, you can walk and you can see a statue, and it's of the Revolutionary War. And in the Revolutionary War in 1770s, you see that there's these groups of white men, right, fighting for their freedom, and they're shooting. But then Over to the side, there's this guy playing the drums. And if you look carefully, you're like, oh, that guy is black. But then you look even closer, you're like, he looks like he's African. And if you look at the down at the name and they tell you the story underneath them, right next to this black church where Israelites were who wrote in Hebrew, right? Right down the street, there's this guy who's known down there, who's revered down there, who fought the Revolutionary War. He's playing the drums, right? They tell you who he is, and they tell you, right, that he basically went over to Haiti because he was an Igbo slave, right? People say there's no proof, no evidence of the slave trade, blah, blah. There wasn't slave trade like that. Look, I get a lot of us were from here, no doubt about it. But to act like the other side didn't happen, here you have an Igbo slave, right? Who was known in the same area where people, once they got free, started writing in Hebrew. An Igbo slave who came over, fought as a slave, couldn't get anything, and basically was put right back into slavery, leaves and is able to get over to Haiti, fights in the Haitian Revolution to be able to basically become like a Haitian monarch of sorts once they win. Documented. Right? He's trying to circumvent the curses instead of being obedient to the law. But he comes from the same area where people are doing what? Some of the biggest groups of Israelites who follow the law still to this day, Igbo. Same place Lawada Equiano comes from. Interesting. It's documented. But once again, if you want to put this stuff out, you got to hide it. You got to hide it in plain sight. You put it in a movie, you put it in a book, and then you tell everybody, well, it's not our fault that you didn't go find it. I mean, we clearly said where it was. Right? But they have to, by law, they have to make sure that they show you this stuff. Problem is, we don't know where to research it. That's the problem, is we don't know where to research it. We don't know where to research. And that's all I'm really called to do. I'm trying to be a bridge. Deep down inside, DNA memory, spirituality, psychology, your soul ties, even curses that you carry, even blessings that you carry. You know this stuff. Right? You know this stuff. Yeah, Jean-Jacques. You can talk about Daddy Bookman. You can talk about all these different things. Yeah, Jean-Jacques, Daddy Bookman. I'm forgetting the name of the, they call her like a priestess or whatever, a voodoo priestess or a voodoo priestess or whatever. I can't remember her name on top of my head right now. But yeah, and Jean-Jacques continued. Jean-Jacques actually messed some things up because he didn't get himself together and he started having a Eurocentric mind. So even though they got free, he basically tried to make himself president for life, basically make himself king for life. It didn't cause a lot of people to be able to be helped. And how you doing, Sister Deja? You know, so we just don't know where to research it. We don't know. This is your story out here. It's documented. You don't have to be a Jali Griot just to be able to know this stuff. But once again, why do we even have people that have a problem receiving it or receiving it? Why? Why do we have a problem with that? Why do we have a problem with that? Why are people frustrated and upset and angered by that? Because they're emotionally attached to something that's not real. Because if we start telling you this stuff and we start showing you this stuff, then people say, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? You're a reverse racist. You're trying to take us back. It's not wrong for you to talk about Pearl Harbor, December 6th. It's not wrong for you to talk about, or is it December 6th, December 7th? I believe December 6th, right? I've been to Pearl Harbor. I've been there. I've seen the ships at the bottom and all that stuff or whatever. Very eerie, and they deserve respect, right? It's not wrong for you to remember September 11th. Never forget. It's not wrong for you to remember George Washington's birthday, his born day. People just celebrated it. People just celebrated it. Right? In Hiroshima, they should remember Hiroshima. Matter of fact, it's interesting. In Hiroshima, Guess what they did? They paid reparations. When you wipe the people out, especially the people that weren't deserving it, we have a problem. See, remember I was talking about earlier, people do the whole African thing. I've said this before on one of our live sessions in the evenings, probably a week, 2 weeks ago now, somewhere in there. But I said, hey, people don't recognize this with all the stuff you hear about people talking about the trying to deny the African slave trade or act like it wasn't a big deal because you're only thinking about American and thinking about how slaves, even if they came in through Africa, wouldn't have came directly from Africa, but would have came through other places. And yes, I get that we're native. I talk about my indigenous side to the Americas and what a real American is, a copper colored person, indigenous to the Americas all the time. And people won't just go visit the point of no return and other places where we were being sent to many different places all over the world, not just there, right? Brazil was a bigger slave plantation than the Americas ever were. And a lot of people who were in the Confederacy, they left and went over with their slaves to continue to slave trade over in Brazil. That's why in Brazil, still to this day, they try to have parties at least once a year to where they'll bring out Confederate flags and they dance over them to Brazilian music, because white Brazilian people think they're better than Black Brazilian people because they were either the overseers or the slave masters or the slave owners over the Black chattel. But even if they only, like I said before, even if they only took one tree from a nation and they stole, or they took the tree, they saw the tree, they liked it, and they stole the fruit, they ate it, and then they liked what they ate, they stole the seed and they planted it in another country. If 5,000 trees grow from that one seed that they took from that plant, and guess what? Those 5,000 trees are all stolen from stolen fruit that came from a stolen tree. And even if they chop down the tree and there's just nothing left for the stump, it doesn't mean there's lack of evidence. It means that now the roots are the evidence. You are still rooted, right? To be able to find out where you came from. But we have this fight that goes on amongst us. Well, I can't find all the there's plenty of evidence. You know how many sunken ships there still are to this day that people find? You know how many statues there have been made to our people who jumped off the side of the ship? You know how many buildings are made that we know of that are made out of old slave ships? Do you know that in do you know that what is the thing that we're looking at? Are you aware? You haven't helped me. Does help me with these words. Like do you not know that you can go to Annapolis and see on the shore that they had, before there was a movie about them, they had um in Annapolis, in the pier, that's naval station, right? That's Navy, US Navy. They know how ships work. They've got this stuff. They are mandated to keep certain history. They were talking about Kunta Kinte before you knew who that was. And thank you for the love, appreciate it. You got to realize and recognize what's going on. It's documented. But you have it in your mind because what? You're going through a Eurocentric prism. You're going through a modern American prism. Oh, well, I went on this site. That's what I've heard everybody saying now. I went on this site. And on this site, they say that only this many people lived in America. They didn't consider anybody but white people to be people. So if they're telling you about slavery, a lot of them didn't even talk about what slaves were, because if you treated them like people, then you had to tax them like people. That's what the Three-Fifths Compromise is about, that there were more slaves and more land down in the South than there were slaves and land up in the North. Excuse me. And people to the South were already trying to commandeer land that was already on the West Coast. They were already fighting against the Khalifa people and other people to be able to commandeer as much land as possible. Therefore, when they went over there looking for the land, guess what? They had more land. So they had 3/5 land compared to the North 2/5, and they had more slaves. So they came up with a compromise that anything, they had already came up with the compromise that anything that was based off of this in the South had to pay 60% of the tax, and the North had to pay 40% of the tax. However, when it came to slaves, the North started saying, well, you got all them slaves and y'all don't pay any taxes on them, and we're sitting here paying taxes on ours. That's not fair. And the South said, oh, well, you shouldn't be paying taxes on them anyways because they're not people. That's what they said. You shouldn't be worried about them anyways because they're not people. They said, well, even if they're not people, they're still property, right? The South said, yeah, okay, we'll give you that. That's property. So what do? They say, okay, cool, no problem. We'll go ahead and we'll pay 60% tax on our property. You were already 0% human being. That was the argument, is why are we paying taxes on them? And South was like, well, they're property. Why are you paying taxes? They don't exist. They're like, well, they do exist. They're property. So then the South said, okay, we'll put them in that 3/5 compromise. It's documented. So when I say to you that somebody says they don't think you're a human in the system. And how you doing, Brother TJ? If I say this in this system, you're not considered to be a human being. I'm not telling you something just based off of I don't like a certain dynamic or a certain tribe or a certain group of people. I'm telling you, like, this is the behavior based upon what's documented. Right? It's in the book. Once again, where do? You hide it in the book. I'm literally reporting to you. You hear somebody reporting, they're ported somewhere different than you're ported. You're watching on television, right? And they say, "Hi, this is Kofi Ofori with Channel 6 News, and I'm here to tell you today to report to you that this is what's going on behind me." As you can see, they're just giving you news, right? If I'm a great reporter, I don't mess with the facts. I just give you what's there. This is what we're talking about, and people are mad at us because we would dare report. Because now, if we're going to report, let's be honest about it. Who are we reporting? See, we're thinking about it just in why won't they listen to our report? See, the Bible says, who will believe our report? It's ours. But see, when I'm reporting on somebody else, in their system, you think that this is black stuff because that's what y'all repeat in the hood and stuff, and y'all repeat on the street. But see, where they come from, snitches get stitches. You don't talk about the Kennedy family selling bootleg stuff and then helping to make bootlegging legal, and then putting one of their children, Jack Kennedy, in Congress to make sure he supports Hitler and stuff, and then putting that Jack Kennedy allowing therefore to have that same power structure dynamic to put his son JFK JFK John as president. Then RFK was going to become president right behind him. You don't talk about that as being powerful, right? That's just supposed to be a coincidence. You look the other way. If you can shut your mouth, we'll put some money in your pocket, or we just let you live. Right? This is documented. JFK had the same belief as his father about the Nazi Party. How do we know that? How do we know that John had the same thought process as his father Jack did? Because JFK's journal is out. Had to be released up to a certain amount of time. And when you read in his journal, you'll discover very quickly that JFK said, oh yeah, I think that Hitler is somebody that one day will be considered to be a genius and he'll get the credit that he really deserves. But y'all think that JFK is somebody that loves black folk because he turned the movement that was going to be, they were going to burn DC to the ground, into a movement where they marched on DC. And so since he was able to make that happen, in your mind, you think that that means that he loves you. And that's why ever since that happened, black people have started voting Democrat all the time. You weren't voting Democrat before that. You know that, right? Like back before then, a black Republican was the way to go. And I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I realize it's all foolishness, right? To get you and I to be against each other. But you vote Democrat because you think the JFK, not because you don't vote Democrat because Obama. Now they have a modern version for you to look at. You call it President Obama, Barack Obama, and they made sure he didn't get killed because they need him to be something that makes a whole bunch of people say black people are Democrats. But Eisenhower before JFK, Eisenhower was black. Abraham Lincoln was Melungeon, so he was basically black. One drop rule. If you say, well, no, people come in all shapes and sizes and colors, one drop rule. We're talking about this country. We're talking about this law. Okay. So Eisenhower was black. Lincoln was black. That's why Republicans love to bring up Lincoln. They think because he freed the slaves, which he never did. The Emancipation Proclamation didn't work, because if it did, then why would you? If the Emancipation Proclamation was dedicated to making sure slavery was over, that was supposed to be enforced basically January 1st, 1863. Remember, when we do watch night services, that's based upon us watching to see if what's going to happen is real. They made a decree in the middle, basically, of 1862 by December 31st, uh, December 31st, 1862, we were waiting to see what's going to happen. We watched. That's what the watch night service comes from. But the Emancipation Proclamation didn't really work anyways, because if it did, if it really emancipated slaves, then why did he have to try and say that the 13th Amendment did? Problem with that is the 13th Amendment didn't free the slaves, because it just said you couldn't be made a slave just because you were black, which is why they started coming up with the prison industrial complex, and they started locking you up. It's documented. You show me in the 13th Amendment where it says that you are free from slavery. You think that, you see, you didn't read the rest. You heard a piece of it. It's documented. We're talking about documented devastation, right? The documentation of devastation. It's there for you to see that they continue to do the same thing. Yet you keep thinking you can go through the same culture, doing the same thing, getting the same results. But then you're trying to figure out why you have anxiety. Why am I always anxious about what's coming next? Why do I always hate watching the news? Because I know I'm going to have to watch somebody else was killed or shot by a police officer, this and that. Why do I always have to be worried about if I invest? Because I feel like investments don't work for my people. Why? Because you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. That's not capitalism. That's not democracy. That's insanity. That's what it is. It's insanity. We keep waiting for something that we have documentation that says it's not going to work. Even if it is working, which it is, in all honesty, it's not working for us. So if it's not working for us, then should we continue down that road? Or should we start doing things that are sane? See, now we got to ask, is it insane for me to say, to look at the story of mankind and say, when my people have flourished, it has always been when we've had our own tribes, our own kingdoms, or even when we've been segregated? Is that insane for me to say? If I just look objectively, I'm not saying that I believe in complete separation and segregation and all that, but is it all right for my people to have something that's our own, and for me to say support your own? Because that's what everybody else does. They'll say it's insane or reverse racism for me, but you don't have a problem with the Jewish community only doing business with the Jewish community. You don't have a problem with the Amish basically doing business with the Amish. You don't have a problem with white society doing business with white society. You don't have a problem with it. The only people you seem to have a problem with this happening with is the children of Yasha, or Negroes, or black folk, or Native Americans, or Moors, or whatever. That seems to be the only people that you have a problem with them being who they're supposed to be. Yep, it's okay for, matter of fact, it's okay for Chinese people to do business with Chinese people, or Chinese people to take over whole nations or countries. You say, oh no, it's not. But you have no problem with Chinese people. You say China's an enemy, but you have no problem with China being all up in Ghana. You had no problem with the Chinese. You haven't stopped or fought the Chinese. You talk about we need to go to war with Russia. You haven't stopped. You haven't gone to war with the Chinese when they're sitting up there literally building infrastructures for African warlords. And if the African warlords don't follow what the Chinese say, they just shut off all their power because the Chinese own their power grid. You don't have a problem with the Chinese having a big influence on your fake corporation in Washington, D.C. Oh, yes. I've been at 7th and H too many times in my life to not look up and see China and know that every place I go around that area, right down the street from the National Mall, which is where your Congress building is, and right where your George Washington Monument we're talking about, not too far a walk down, going towards Pennsylvania Avenue, right, where the White House is. You know what I'm saying? Like, and everywhere you go, if you're gonna go to the McDonald's there, you're gonna have to see Chinese lettering over that McDonald's, or Chinese characters, excuse me. If you're gonna go to the movie theater, you got to go through some Chinese characters. If you're gonna go to see the Washington Wizards play or to see the Washington Capitals play, you're going to have to go through some Chinese lettering. If you're gonna go to Starbucks, you're gonna have to go through some Chinese lettering. There's gonna be a bunch of Chinese stores and places around there too. If you want to go to certain churches there, you got to see Chinese lettering. But guess what? Guess who they partner with? Right next to some of those Chinese churches and Chinese businesses. Oh, don't forget there's going to be a synagogue right there too. You work with them anyways. They're working together, literally right there. I got Jew or Jewish people. I have Chinese people. I have the American corporation, the United States corporation. All three together is one, working together right there in my face. Right there is one in my face. Mitch McConnell married to a Chinese woman who's a daughter of somebody who still lives in China and is known as one of the biggest supporters of communism in China to this day. I mean, Joe Biden, stuff that came about him and his family. That's Republican and Democrat. It's documented, right? But they have you believing, they say, don't look at the documentation. Just listen to what we say. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah, and thank you for your service. I'm former military myself, right? Like, but pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to that connection that's there. You only pay attention to yada, yada, yada. Pay no attention. See, even in the U.S. military, or if you become president, or you become a mayor or a governor, we all have to say the same oath. Say the same oath. What does the oath start off with? I will support. I state your name. That means your authority. So you're authorizing this to happen to you. I, so and so, will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both what? Foreign, but don't forget, you could be an enemy domestic too. Don't get it twisted. We look to lock up folk. See, we only talk about foreign enemies. See, even in Israel, we have to be careful. See, when we come into this thing, are you prepared to defend this faith against all enemies, both foreign and domestic? Your family might be a domestic problem. Maybe that's why the Most High is saying in this season, I'm gonna let you have some separation. And we're fighting. No, 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 not them, not them. That could be domestic terrorism, and you not even know it. And you don't want to praise him for that, but you probably should. I would say you should. It hurts. It hurts. I deal with it. Why am I being ostracized? Why am I being separated? You're being protected from domestic terrorism. Now, if you just acting a fool, you acting a fool. We need to figure that out, right? But it could be that you're being protected from domestic terrorism. I can't have this in my house. We got to pull this up by the root and throw it away. We got to allow the Most High to come in and separate the wheat from the tare. And then once he separates the tare, he'll burn it up for us. See, you're sitting up there mad because domestic terrorism is being taken care of. Come on. Why are we fasting right now? Family fast. Why are we doing that? It's going to cause some things to be taken from you. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You're gonna find some things out about yourself in the middle of a fast. Oh, yes, you will. You can't deal with the devil coming to you to tempt you if you haven't learned how to fast yet. If you haven't learned how to release some things, you're going to have a tough time. Even if you can't do a 40-day fast physically, you better learn how to do a 40-day fast as far as fasting from allowing people to have you to take your peace. you might need to just let that go so that when you start to eat that again and introduce it, you don't eat it. See, watch this. After you fast it, at first you won't, especially at first, it's impossible for you to eat anywhere close to as much as what you did because your stomach is always expanded. It always got something going on. It's always got something in it, so it never has a chance to even decrease. A lot of you think that when you're hungry, when you hear that, right, that little sound with your stomach, you hear that type thing, you go, "Oh, I must be hungry." No, your stomach is saying, "Thank you. I have a chance to get smaller." Right? It's talking to you. You say, "My stomach's talking to me. Let's fill it up again." Because your addiction takes over the conversation. But your stomach exactly like, no, 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 I need to, you know, like your stomach is saying, I need to get this together. It's like finally your body is saying, your cells are bit like, woo, is it real? Like your cells get confused at first. That's why it takes about 3 days. If you do a complete fast, like you're not eating anything for days and days and days, after the first three, like it takes 3 days, your body goes through like, hunger comes in waves. So you'll have extreme hunger, not hunger, extreme hunger, not hunger anyways. But the first 3 days, your body doesn't really start taking care of itself yet. It can deal with the waste getting out of it, but it still can't really take care of itself yet because it's still like, I'm used to eating every day. This can't be real. And what'll happen is after the first 3 days, your body will say, "Oh, I guess we're not eating." Is it an emergency? Your body says, "It's not an emergency yet. We got all this stuff in here that shouldn't be in here. Let's eat that. Let's get rid of that." So then it starts looking at different options to eat that's in your body. Do we have do we have any disease in here that shouldn't be in here? It starts looking for stuff, right? Your body's been so used to getting filled up every day, it can't even focus on disease. So some people carry around disease because your body never had a chance to actually look for it. Your body starts looking for things that are toxins. Well, let's just get this stuff out of here because it's definitely something we can't take on right now because we're too hungry. Remember, your body can't really overall. I know many systems are working our body at the same time, but technically, your body can really only focus, as far as physically, can really only focus on one thing at a time. So if your body's sitting there like we're hungry, then your body's going to do whatever it can to make sure it gets out of hunger. So anything that will hurt it as far as hunger or anything that will get it to stop being hungry, it deals with. So it starts saying, let me deal with this, let me deal with that. After some days, right, it starts saying, let me get rid of waste because being sick, I can't handle being sick right now. Like I can't really handle like that stuff in me. I'm hungry. So in order to stop dealing with hungry, at least I can stop being sick. So you'll start urinating. After a while, you start seeing like black coming out of your urine. You start thinking you're dying or something crazy, right? In medical field, they don't think about this stuff. So if you go to a medical field and you've been fasting and you tell them, man, I've been fasting, or I've been eating like this, sometimes you can just eat healthy even, and you'll see black come out of urine and stuff. And they'll say, oh no, you keep doing that, you're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna kill the person. Why would you do that to them? But like the person in a sense is dying because the body's saying, I'm killing off all this stuff that doesn't belong here. So you can be going through pain, but the pain is a sign that you're getting better. Why? Because the body is making you're going through what? Being a living sacrifice. You're alive, but you got to sacrifice some things to keep on living. If you want to live longer, you got to sacrifice some of the things you do. You said you're getting cold out of your system, been drinking ginger, turmeric, cayenne tea. Yeah, well, especially if you do no water. Now, no water is not necessarily necessary, but I guess if you want to do that for extra, whatever, you can live without water. No more than what usually 3 days is the max. So I guess 3 days, especially if you're in the sun, especially. But water is fine on a fast. But you could do that, especially if you have certain things to drink on, or certain impurities, or certain, what do you call it? Sorry, y'all, parasites. Certain parasites that are still drinking off the water, then maybe you want to just make it all dry. I would suggest that if you're going to do that type of fast, probably see if you can do it on some days you don't have to work or take off work or call in sick. I hate to tell you to lie, but call in sick if you can, right? But you're going to discover, like, if you ever do like I'm not eating for days type fast, yeah, like a lot of stuff, it just leaves you. A lot of stuff just leaves you. And so after you finish doing that, right, and you'll even have like black and urine and stuff like that, keep drinking water, keep being persistent, keep doing that stuff or whatever, you'll start seeing that your body says, well, what else do we have to eat? Your body says, well, we got some fat here. So now people that want to lose weight, guess what your body's going to do? It's going to start looking for fat. It'll start even doing stuff like, hey, we don't want to start eating off of anything vital, no vital organs or anything. So we're eating off fat, but the fats get kind of low. What can we eat? Body will say, oh, well, we got scars. They'll start eating your scars. Scars that you've had as long as you can remember, your scars go away. Your blemishes in your skin go away. Right? Some of you, because you eat wrong, that's why you have like endometriosis, or you'll have like excessive bleeding sometimes from the vaginal area when you're dealing with your period. So because you're dealing with those things, you'll end up like having those issues. So guess what? Because you're not eating, now you'll start seeing even some of the blemishes in your skin go away from that. Right? A lot of stuff, that a lot of pimples and stuff like that people get as well. People don't realize this, but it's waste. And if your digestive system is messed up to the point to where you can't get the food out, and that's really what happens with a lot of teenagers, is that bad food and also hormones and stuff as well that normally would need to get out and waste. There's so much change happening, right? All of a sudden, it can't all make it out through the waste. And then like increase with the bad food, can't make it out through normal waste process. So guess what? If it can't make it out through that, what do you need to do? It's going to get out some way. So now it starts coming out in pimples and stuff. Well, we've been doing right now is intermittent fasting, so 12-hour. But I'm saying in general, if you were to just fast completely, all that stuff happens. Yeah. So a lot of times you don't think about it, but it's waste trying to make itself through the skin. That's why it's disgusting. All those videos you be watching, the pimple popping, that's what you're watching, is waste coming out of somebody's skin. It's our pleasure, and thank you for being on, right? It's so this stuff, once again, though, I'm not making it up. It's documented. Even in the health, it's documented. So why weren't you allowed to eat certain foods? You weren't allowed to eat certain foods, biblically speaking. Why? Because it was documented. This will kill you. It's not only that it's unlawful just so that to say you can't do something. It's going to kill you. Eating pigs can survive through certain disease and certain things that get in and live off you, right? These parasites, they live off of you. They can live inside of pigs, or I'm sorry, the pig can live with these things, but you can't. It'll kill you. A lot of people that have brain issues, if we just be honest about it, a lot of people don't even think like this, but if we be honest about it, a lot of people who have issues with your brain are having issues with the fact that you ate a lot of pig. And a lot of those parasites have lived in your brain. And matter of fact, I don't know if she's on today. I'm forgetting the name now. I apologize. My sister up in Chicago. Prayerfully it comes to me. She comes on from time to time. When we had our meetup on there and we did the live session with our people that we met up with, she's a nurse. She said, yeah, like there's a lot of people we find that have these worms and stuff on their brain. And the worms, when they die up there, they actually cause, black spots on the brain. Right? Gout as well. Matter of fact, a lot of times, what are you eating off the pig? Are you eating chitterlings? Because if you're eating them chitlins, then guess what you eating? If you're eating them chitlins, then guess what you eating? You eating straight up poop. You're taking the waste of a pig and eating it. If you eating pig foot, what was the pig walking in the whole time? That's what you eating. That's what was being absorbed. People eating pig foot down to the knuckles and stuff. What are we doing? And then trying to figure out why we're sick. It's documented already. This stuff happens. You said you don't even eat meat. Every time you eat meat makes you feel sick. You stopped 3 years ago. That's great if you can get there, yeah. Yeah, you got to watch where your diet is. Lymphatic system is blocked. Usually when you see those blemishes and stuff, yeah, a lot of that too. I didn't even think about that. Well, it depends on how long you want to fast. I'm talking about if you want to go complete without any food, 40 days, that's what's going to happen. And what happens with a lot of people is a lot of people stop fasting because you get freaked out. You get freaked out by your urine looking black or dark. You get freaked out by, going through pain, but pain comes in waves. So you might have a day. Well, guess what? If you're fasting, you might have a day where you're going to go through a lot of pain. but the next day it'll go away because your body's going to say, I don't want to deal with pain. I can only do one thing at a time. I don't focus very well when pain is the only thing I'm really focused on. So let's go ahead and figure out what else we can eat off of our body to make sure that we're healed and whole. What you say? You said we stop feeding the disease and it dies. The body's designed to survive. You like those videos? I kind of get on them too sometimes if I'm not careful. These are chitterlings. Even the name sounds like putting lipstick on me. That's interesting. Yeah, but I mean, that's real. We're having on this thing. It's like a scab or wound. It hurts more right before the healing starts. Yeah, it's going to hurt, right? But what happens? Somebody goes, "Oh, it's difficult for me. It hurts because I'm fasting." Let me remind you, it's documented. It's going to hurt, right? Let me also remind you, there's a lot of people that didn't ever stop eating long enough to let their body heal, and they didn't live that long. And we said this yesterday. See, you think it's about the environment, right? The wineskin. Can it hold the new wine, the person you're trying to become? Is your environment healthy enough? They say that, like, if you're gonna have sex, and brothers be out there buying what Cialis and I don't know all the stuff now, what Blue Chew, Cialis, Viagra, and all this stuff, they out there buying it, right? But they say something to you very clear. Make sure that you talk to a doctor and make sure you're healthy. Why? Because your body has to be able to function, because you're about to basically ask blood to flow through your body. That's what gives the erection. It's not just because you're turned on, right? You can be turned on but not have have bad flow, have bad blood flow, right? There's been sisters who have left brothers because they can't get it up, or sisters who are so sad and frustrated because they can't get it up, or couples who start getting into all type of weird sexual activity outside of their relationship and allowing open marriages because they can't supposedly get it up. But the reality is that it's blood flow, right? How many marriages have been damaged because people just don't know how to eat and make sure that blood flows correctly, that the heart is taken care of, right? That you're eating things that help the seed. How many of you have tried to have babies and didn't think, well, let's see if we can make sure that we have some figs and some peaches, things that look like you are what you eat. Figs and peaches. Figs look like testicles and they have seed inside. Open it up, they have seed inside. They're even hairy. I'm sorry if that's disgusting, but they're even hairy, right? What does a peach look like? Y'all know. Come on, we adults on here. And I won't say it outright. I won't say it too much because I know we have babies that listen on, right? But come on, let's be honest about this, right? You know what I'm saying? They're fuzzy as well, right? Peach fuzz. Come on. Right? We ain't talking about nothing that you don't know. All right. I know the high schooler in us comes out from time to time. I know. It's okay. I'm cool with it. I'm just saying, we know what it is. Right? So if you had something that helped with blood flow, if you went for a walk every once in a while, right? Maybe every day even, right? If you decided that you can go ahead and have something to eat that's going to help you out. And heck, yeah, it's even okay to have, forgive the no pun intended, but it's even okay to have an aphrodisiac. Now, we don't eat this stuff in our culture, but some of you still do. I mean, oysters. Look at what oysters look like, especially when they're prepared for eating. Some people like out the shell and all that, or to have the top shell taken off, whatever. Like, we know what this is. And by the way, if it's great for things that are going to help you with sex drive or sexual activity, guess what else it's great for? It means it's great for pregnancy. And by the way, almost 100% of the time, not always, but almost 100% of the time, whatever is righteous for a man to eat for his sexuality is also righteous for a woman to eat for hers, and vice versa. So if peaches is something you eating for you, then peaches is something that's great for you as for your husband, right? By the way, see, like, I'm trying not to stay in this too long, right? And we have classes where we go over this so we can be more into it, because once again, I don't ever know exactly all the age range of who's watching, right? But even if you look at like okra, okra, right? Okra is slimy, right? If you're a woman that has a problem with being slimy down there, if you will, or not being able to get enough or wet or something, eat okra for a while. You are what you eat. If it looks like it, that's what it's for. If you're having problems with something in your breast area, right? Whether it's milk, breastfeeding, right? Whether it's something that's going on, whether it's cancer, even, guess what? We need to make sure that you're having some of. You need to have lemons. You need to have limes. You need to have grapefruit. You need to have citrus. Why? If I take a lemon and I cut it in half and I put it here, what does it look like? And by the way, men go through breast cancer as well, right? So if I'm having the issue, that's one of the reasons, not just for cleansing blood, but also it's great for your breast. It makes things more alkaline. If your baby's eating, it's going to produce more milk because you're more alkaline, and your baby will be healed better because your milk actually adjusts to whatever the baby needs. That's why you should spend as much time with your baby as possible in the womb, not these artificial wombs they talking about coming out, right? Or having somebody else carry your baby and then you try to take them on and you give them formula. Your breast milk literally is designed to give your baby everything necessary to heal. So you can literally, right? And if you take that lemon, lime, grapefruit, you cut it in half, you put it here, it looks like breast, right? But if you turn on the inside, and if you look at the inside of a woman's breast, you'll also see that it looks like mammary glands on the inside. It's designed to tell on itself. It's documented. See, once again, when we talk about documentation is not only what you read or write or through empirical data or something else. Somebody told you that. So you don't even look at culture. You don't even look at nature. My wife teaches when we learned in class, last week on Friday for Herbalism 1, we learned that 70% of what you see around you is going to be natural. It's going to be trees and stuff. Now, some of you don't even live in environments like that, but for the most part, even if you don't live in a place where there's a lot of trees, just period, if you look around at everything around you, 70% is not going to be touched with human hands. 70%. You said what deals with hair loss? If you're dealing with hair loss, basically that can be blood flow issues. Eat things that are great for blood. If you're talking about hair loss is dealing with follicles. Hair loss can be dealing with oxygen, not eating things that are oxygenated. Hair loss can be dealing with stuff as far. Matter of fact, my wife has a tincture specifically to help people with hair loss as well. But things that are great for the skin, anything that's great for elasticity of the skin. Your hair is just skin. Right, your nails are just skin. So if you eat anything that helps your nails, it's going to help your skin, right? So I believe vitamin E, right, helps the nails, right? I think I'm correct in that. So if they help the nails, they're going to help the hair. Yeah. Yeah, see, we have the laws of the universe, universal law inside of us. Why? Because we live in a universe. What is a universe? Uni, a verse, spoken sentence. Universe, a single spoken sentence. Whatever is in the universe is also designed to help what was spoken in the universe. And by the way, the one that spoke in the universe who lives in the kingdom also says he extended that kingdom to where it lives inside you. So if he spoke it to cause all this, he also spoke it to cause all this. It's documented. All you had is sweets as a child were fruits. Yeah. I wish I could go back and make that all that I had. Man, I wish somebody had told me that what I desired in soda was not sugar and all that stuff. It was just the carbonation. Once I found that out, I don't even care if it costs me $5 a day, which is a lot. $35 a week, believe it or not, is a lot for water. But I'll go ahead and pay $35 a day for a couple bottles of this every day. If it means, I try not to do that much because you really shouldn't have that much carbonated water. But I'm just saying, if all I'm addicted to is this, I'd rather deal with the stuff that comes with being addicted to this than the stuff that comes with being addicted to soda. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of us weren't in that situation, right? Cookies is a guilty pleasure, yeah, and we can come out of it. So it's documented, right? The CDC says this stuff. You said what's in the bottle? It's just water, sparkling water. Usually I have the place I go to pretty much has two brands. So either there's a lot of sparkling water. I don't do water in plastic. I try to not drink out of plastic as much as possible. If I have to, I have to. And if I have to, I'm very quick. Drink it really quick and then have it be done with. But yeah, it's just sparkling water. Either I get this or sometimes I get not Tropicana. Topico, right? Topico mineral water or sparkling water, right? But that's all you're dealing with, so literally, if you're having soda, a lot of you are not even addicted. Not well, you become addicted to the sugar, but really the feeling that you like, a lot of it just comes because there's fizzes in it. A matter of fact, if you know how to, my wife is getting better at it, so she can start even serving you guys in that area too. But a lot of stuff, even as far as carbonated, like if you know how to make sure that stuff ferments correctly, sometimes it's going to cause natural carbonation anyways, right? So if you know how to ferment certain things, not necessarily only to make it turn into wine, but if you can get things to ferment in certain ways, you can actually make carbonation anyways as you drink. Yeah, these are pretty decent. They don't last as long, but actually a lot of these, especially with the bottles design, they last pretty long. They last longer than sodas do for sure. Unless, well, even soda in a glass bottle lasts longer. Like whatever I drink, I try. Even if I am drinking straight up soda, I normally try to water sodas down or juices down too, because juices are not natural either nowadays, right? Haven't been for a long time. But yeah, either this or there's another one. I usually get them from, I guess, I don't even know where I get Topico from. Topico's kind of all over too nowadays. But one of those two is usually kind of my go-to, but it's just usually because of where I am. And even places I travel, usually those kind of end up being the main things. You said you love Rice Krispie treats, made them all the time. Yep, pork all over it. There's a lot of pork all over a lot of stuff. There's pork, leaven. Leaven is great at times, but leaven also can be something that takes over too, because leaven is alive. So if you put leaven in your system all the time, if you drink a beer all the time, right, yeast, then that's why you get the beer belly, is because you got activity going on down there. It's not just fat. People just go, "Oh, I got a beer belly. It's fat." No, you got some activity going on down there. There's stuff living in there, right? Or even if you want to make sure that you're skinny, you might want to have some stuff living in there too. That's why they talk about probiotics. But probiotics basically learn how to ferment for certain food. Learn how to ferment certain foods so that you can eat it. So, you said you saw a video of a woman of Asian descent making Sprite using sugar, water, pine needles, and a glass bottle left in the sun for 3 days. Yeah, that's about right. That's what we're trying to figure out the formula now. And sometimes even in it, you got to 3 days is not always an indicator, because you got to figure out like what's in your water. Like that's something they don't tell you, but like you got to figure out what's in the water that you're putting stuff in, and do you have the same exact sugar and stuff? Because things operate different. So it might be 4 or 5 days, it might be 2 days, it might be 2.5 days. You kind of got to govern it for where you are in your environment. Once again, that wineskin that you're in. Do they have vegan porkless marshmallows? Oh, I didn't know that. But really, if you want marshmallow, now once again, it's about sugar though. So if you're looking for what we think about marshmallows to be, it's different. But not too long ago, and when I say not too long ago, even 30, 40, 50 years ago, still, probably even 20 years ago, maybe, I'm not sure. Marshmallows were not what you think they are now. Marshmallows are a flower or a plant. Marshmallows are a herb. Now I gotta look it up. I don't know what part of the plant they are. Hold on one second. Marshmallow plant. Okay. I think it is a plant, right? Yeah, marshmallow plant and officinalis, right? If you look it up, white flower, right? There's a white flower on there. That's what a marshmallow was. I'm not saying they never put any sugar or anything in it, but a marshmallow initially was just a plant. Now you think of it as the candy, you know, and marshmallows are actually help you out. Yeah, now you got to look to see how much gelatin they have in it. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Once again, even learn how to read your food. Now they have laws to where they don't have to tell you everything that's in your food. So that's a little unfortunate. You might have to do some heavy research on what you eat, but it's worth it. Anything that you're getting out of boxes, read the label. Learn how to read your food. Heck, even fruit and vegetables, right? If you see, and forgive me right now, right? I don't have, we teach this in natural medicine one. I don't have all this at the top of my head. All right, let me see. I have it in my notes. Okay, I might have to get some help from the internet too then. Let me see. Because I remember most of it, yeah. So if you see something like this, right? Let's say it's got 5 digits on the sticker, right? A lot of you know this, some of you may not. If you got something that's got 5 digits on it, see, it's there, it's documented. You just got to know how to read it, right? You got to become. See, we talk about that we can read because we can read books, but can you read stickers? Can you read government? Can you translate? So if you have this on your fruit, right? Let's say it's got 5 digits. You want to pay attention to what's in the 5 digits. So number one, if there's a 5-digit number, right? But the first digit is the number 9, right? If you got 5 digits, but the first digit is the number 9, guess what you need to do? You need to realize, at least it doesn't necessarily mean it's fully organic, because organic doesn't always mean what you think it means. But if it has the number 9 up front, guess what that means? It means that it's supposedly organic. And bare minimum, it means that they probably haven't, hopefully, because they can lie and they don't have to put anything on fruit, by the way. You know, they don't have to put anything on fruit or vegetables. All right. So sometimes you just got to guess, even when you go to your local places and you think it's like a mom and pop shop or whatever, like even some of that stuff, you got to realize you're kind of rolling the dice. Right. So you still might want to research, or hey, like come in there, kind of hear what people have to say about it, maybe taste a little bit of it, see what it is, see what it does to your body after a while. And then once you see it's okay, then you can keep going back to the same place, right? But if you see that number 9 in front, that's talking basically like it's saying it's organically grown. Now, organically doesn't mean always they haven't sprayed it at all, or organic doesn't mean they can't put some wax over it, right? They can put wax over them apples. They do that in a heartbeat. Sometimes do it with pears and stuff too. You're used to apples having the taste of wax. They're doing it for 2 reasons: to help to preserve it, but also what's another reason why they're doing it? They're doing it because they're trying to tell you that they're also trying to get you to say, oh, look how shiny it is, right? So supposedly the number 9 means that it is like supposed to be free of chemicals. It was grown organically, supposedly. But that's why you have to be careful what organic means, though, because you can not spray something and still have it without seed. Well, if it has no seed, it's not organic, or it's not real. Because every real fruit, especially if it's a fruit, what makes something a fruit? All fruit have seeds. Anything that has a seed is a fruit. That's why a tomato is a fruit, right? So, you have to read those things. You have to read those things. You have to know what's going on with that, right? All right. But so watch this. If you're looking for something that only has 4 digits, though, if you get something that's 4 digits is telling you, right, that it's organically grown. By the way, I'm sorry, before we even get into that, I think if you have the number 5 on there, this is me going off memory, so I hope I'm correct in this. I believe I am. If you have the number 5 in front of the 5-digit number, that basically is telling you it has been sprayed. They have done something to it. So if you see the number 5, it's documented. You see that? It's documented. Number 4 also. Okay, thank you for that. Number 4. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not wrong about that. Number 5 is number 4. Okay, maybe number 4 means it's sprayed. Well, number 4 is non-organic. Well, basically, all of them technically after number 9 are non-organic, right? But organic is just saying they didn't do too much with it, except they could have still modified it, which means it's technically not what you want to eat. So number 9 is, once again, it's like a roll of the dice. But 4-digit is basically saying it's conventional. Now, number 5, I believe, is saying that it's sprayed, right? Now, hold on one second. I can't. I wish I could find it. I know what video we could go, but I don't know if I could play the video and make sure I keep everybody on at the same time. Hold on one second. Yeah. So I think the number 5 means that it's sprayed. The number 8, if it's in front. I don't know all the numbers, so please forgive me. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm just giving you some that you can look at. The number 8. That's what we're talking about, Jay. The number 8 in front of it is actually saying that it's genetically modified. It's like GMOGE. I don't know what the GE stands for, but GMOGE. Like literally, if you want to look up what that means, I don't remember. I remember that much. GMO, and then it's like separated GE, or might even have like a hyphen in between it or something. But it basically, whatever this is, GMOGE, if you look that up, but that's what the number 8 in front of it means. I don't remember what the GE stands for. I do remember that it stands for genetically modified, right? Number 5, I think, is guaranteed to have pesticides. But if you only have 4 digits, it's basically saying that all bets are off. So if you see a 4-digit code, it's saying all bets are off, and more than likely it contains pesticides, right? So number 4 basically just being like, hey, okay, number 9, fine. What was that? Yeah, number 9 is fine. 8, hate 8. Okay, there you go. Right. If you see 4, right, maybe 4, no more. I don't know. Right. But if you see 4 digits, not the number 4 before the 5 digits, but or the first of the 5 digits, but if you just see 4 digits, it's telling you specifically like all bets are off, and this is probably sprayed. Right. Now here's another one, right? If it's sprayed, have you ever seen what people wear when they spray the food? Have you guys ever seen what people wear? They wear stuff like that y'all be seeing people wear like in movies like Alien and stuff. Or would you see what was the new Alien movie they came out with that they named after the Greek spirit or deity Prometheus? Have y'all saw that? Like stuff that they were wearing for Prometheus and stuff like that? That's what they wear when they spray in the fruit. Those hazmat suits, exactly. So once they finish spraying it and that stuff dries, they still will wear the hazmat suits, but they'll come by and they'll put it in the trucks and stuff like that. And then somewhere down the road, you're supposed to eat that. Yeah, they look like beekeepers. You're supposed to eat that. The people who are spraying that don't even want to touch it. And the people who pay them don't want them to touch it because they know the people that they're paying, they'll die if they touch it. And they don't want liability. So they'll spend money on these hazmat suits just to make sure that the people who spray food that you're going to eat are protected from it so they won't die. But they figure by the time it gets to you, it'll be okay enough for it to just kill you slowly. It's documented. You see, this is why growing our own food and hopefully trading our own food, right? And now we're getting communities together, so this shouldn't be that difficult. And even if one person will come to a community, hey, y'all are growing this down there. Okay, cool. Y'all got something to trade with us up there? Shoot. Okay, one of us can meet 2 hours out the way, 2 hours out the way. You know, maybe we can even give y'all gas money to be able to do it from time to time, right? And you guys can literally start just, hey, people that are in Georgia, people that are in the Carolinas, ain't no problem. We got our stuff together. Somebody in South Carolina can meet with somebody in the Atlanta area. They'll go ahead and trade. Boom. And now stuff that you're growing down there, we can grow, and we can make sure we have this stuff growing in apartments, in front of windows. Well, all right, I showed you yesterday with my wife, right, where she asked me to put this in the window. Right, we have space and stuff outside, things like that, but it's cold. So guess what? We can grow this stuff inside. This ain't nothing but something that you can buy at the store right now, right? You can buy this onion at the store and let it sprout. Let it sit in your kitchen. I know you're so worried about things that happen naturally and stuff like that. Let it sit in your kitchen. It's okay. It's not unclean. It's natural, right? And let this thing grow naturally. This is what you be eating anyways, right? When you're eating them green onions, this is green onions. You could have some. You could literally, if you wanted to, just have a bunch of these to sprout and then let them sprout and root here. And you can start clipping on some of these green onions. And then you could eat the green onions while they keep on sprouting throughout your winter. Right? Let this keep on going and going and going. And before you know it, it'll be time to take this outside. Or even if you want to start it inside your apartment, and you can go ahead and plant this right in there. You see this? This is root. You might want to have an onion tea. You know, you can buy 30, 40 of these if you want it, and let this happen 30, 40 times and put it somewhere in your house. Next thing you know, now you're growing onions. Matter of fact, you could have a business. You could literally just say, hey, you know what? See, this is how the Most High works. He's already placed this inside you. He's planted it inside you. It's in your house. Remember the woman who was about to have to sell her 2 sons into indentured servitude? And she was mad, and she asked the prophet about it. He said, what's in your house? In your house. You could literally feed yourself, get some of this, sell it. You know how many people would buy if you had a package of these? If you can get one package together, right, that just the stuff that naturally grows in your house, you could take something like this. You could maybe put 3 or 4 of these together, put in a little bag, sell it for like $5. And all you got to say is completely grown organically. And take a picture, even take a picture of it sitting on your windowsill. Take a picture of it, and then basically make that your little logo. You know what I'm saying? And somebody would get it just because they said, wow, this person's growing things naturally. Scallions too, yeah. All that stuff. So when you be talking about green onions, that is obviously some of the green onions you eat are made from different types of onions and stuff too. But I'm just saying this is something that's simple, right? Buy a bunch of these and let them do that. Buy a bunch of potatoes, let the potatoes start sprouting. And when they start sprouting, you can take the whole potato, or you can just cut off the part that's sprouting, right? And you can just cut off the part that's sprouting and put that in the ground. The potato is a root. It doesn't have seed. It's a root, right? The onion is not a vegetable. It is a root, right? It's trying to get even deeper. It's trying to grow, but this is a root. You know what I'm saying? We just haven't been taught correctly. So you got a food source right here, but you're afraid. You got some of y'all got huge spaces, or you try to make sure that there's huge spaces so everybody can. Not everybody's always going to be sitting in your apartment, anyways. Even if you just got an apartment, if you got a house, maybe you got more space. If you have a if you have a yard, it's even greater, right? But you can start putting this stuff together now. Exactly. Grow them in buckets. I tell people buy the big trash cans, or the huge buckets even. And and put a bunch of potatoes in there once they started sprouting, put them in there or whatever, because once you have potatoes grow, you can't really stop them. Like if you have them, we have some growing in our yard up north. And man, once you start them growing, once you start growing potatoes and stuff, like you can't really get rid of them unless like you really pull up the earth. Like it's hard. Once potatoes really are growing and they're effective where they are, you can't really take them out. You said you're Leary used to spray your yard years ago, but it's been like 5 years. Well, you can always test it too. Test it to see if it's acidic. And even if it is, pour nutrients into it. Go to the store and buy nutrients and start putting nutrients into the ground. I wouldn't suggest this to eat, but if you really want to, try and see if you can get your hands on some soy and see if you can actually get soy to grow on your ground. Soy was not designed for us to eat. It was actually designed for us to be able to go into the ground. Really, technically, it was designed in places where it got really cold, especially in certain Asian countries. They wanted to keep the ground continuing. They, like a lot of us, we stopped using the ground, and I'm guilty of it too. We stopped using the ground to grow anything, or we stopped tilling it during the winter, which is why it just gets harder and harder and harder and harder, right? You're supposed to do something to the ground. Or if you don't, then just realize like that's why you're not going to be able to grow certain things that could possibly grow in the winter. So what they did was they started using soy, and they would plant the soy in the ground. They also knew that the soy would pull out toxins, right? So you could actually go out and try to see if you can grow some soy, and don't do it to eat. If you're a female, maybe do it to eat, but also if you're doing it to pull out toxins, obviously you don't want to eat that. As males, I say eat as little soy as possible, but for medicinal reasons, every once in a while you might want to eat it. Like I just recently had some for like 2 days in a row because I was trying to pull out some toxins that were in there. My foot felt a certain way, and I realized it's because I was getting in bad habits with sugar again, and so certain things that were happening toxic. So I wanted to have the toxins pulled out. So, I didn't just go to a vegan spot. I went to like a vegan spot that I know everything pretty much going to have soy in it, so I could pull out some of the stuff that was in me. So, but you could go into the ground, just put some soy in there, have the soy pull it up. It also makes sure that the soil is getting used to growing. A lot of the soy roots will even get deep enough. They go deeper. That's why soy is even toxic, because it goes a lot deeper than some of the other places. So it'll grab some of the metals that are down there, but it'll grab certain things out. And even if it grabs certain metals, you want metals in your plant. So it might grab some of the stuff in the roots, but it doesn't pull up all the metal, but it pulls it up some. So then later on, when you start growing some of the other stuff, guess what? Now you can have stuff that actually has some of the metals and things in it that your body needs to be able to function. And how you doing, Mactronics? You said you have rabbits. That's why her box is about 4 feet off the ground. Oh yeah. You definitely, yeah. If you got stuff like that, or yeah, and that's why a lot of people do put their stuff up off the ground. So if you know that you have stuff that's going to come eating, which almost every place does, some people just do raised beds for that reason. Some people just do raised beds just because, in all honesty. But if you obviously need to have it lifted up off the ground, or if you don't want certain things, just know, like, we have chipmunks in certain places, or squirrels in certain places, or whatever, just basics like that. There's going to be animals that are going to come looking for food. But that's also a great sign. If animals come looking for food, it means you should be eating it. Because animals don't eat fake stuff either. They like to leave that stuff alone, right? Like they'll eat it maybe for the first time, but then they'll stop doing it, you know? But so all those things. You said you have a green thumb, taking care of your house plants. Yeah. That you could probably grow your own food. Yeah. So it's not as difficult as you think. It's just getting it started, getting your hands dirty, so to speak. If you make time for it, it doesn't take that much time, especially if you're not going to make the raised bed yourself. It doesn't take that much time. Order a raised bed, put some dirt in it, make sure that it's aerated correctly and everything for what you're growing. But like I said, with potatoes, you could literally go to it could be this simple depending on where you are in cash flow right now or what you want to set aside and invest in because it's your future. It could be as simple as I'm gonna go to the store. I'm gonna get a raised bed. I'm gonna get some dirt from the same place. I'm gonna go to another store. I'm gonna get some potatoes. Nobody in the house can touch these potatoes. We're just gonna let these potatoes sit in here. Maybe you even put them in a dark box or something, whatever. We're just gonna let them we're just gonna let them grow. We're gonna let them sprout. We're gonna make sure it's not wet. They're not in wet locations where they start getting too damp and they start falling apart. But we're gonna let them basically just stay in a position to where they can sprout. Soon as they sprout, I'm gonna take them out the bag and we're just gonna put them in the dirt. I put them about 3 to 6 inches, I believe, probably more like 6 inches if you can, if you want to let them really, really sprout. But no, 8 inches might be too far. But maybe about 2 to 3 inches even. And actually, I think 6 inches would be fine, depending on how far they sprout. But I'm gonna let them get in the ground, and we'll see what happens. And sure enough, after a while, you're gonna see these large greens start shooting up out of what's sprouting. And when they get to be a certain height, all you're gonna do is check on one of them, dig down a little bit, you'll see a potato, and guess what? That potato that sprout like these roots, right? These things that root, what's going to happen is over time, you're going to see what they call buds. Just like you got buds up here, they call like potato buds and things like that, like potato buds or onion, in this, well, I don't know if onions bud exactly the same, but I'm trying to talk about a potato at the same time. So hopefully you get the reference, but you'll start seeing little things bud off. When you see those things bud off, they start getting bigger and bigger. When they get to a certain size, you eat them. You're eating the root. And once you have potatoes, once again, like I said, you can't really get rid of potatoes. And in some places, depending on how cold it does get, right? And there's things you can do to protect your raised beds from cold too. You can do certain things to build over them to make sure that they're protected from cold if necessary. But some places, no matter how cold it gets, because you don't get it as cold as other places, your potatoes will grow all year round. But potatoes, technically, even I think even sweet potatoes, I could be wrong on that one, but potatoes are supposed to be something that grow all year long. So, you know, even if you're starving, even if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, hey, get creative and eat potatoes. That could be the beginning of at least making sure that you can control your food. You never worried about, hey, we don't have enough money, or hey, we got to do a block. No, like we got stuff right here. You know, so you'd be surprised how much stuff. Once again, you talking about the sweet onions and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of y'all, when y'all doing that, or even onion grass, or what was one that I was doing, turnip greens. Turnip greens are just basically the same thing. You take the turnip, and the turnip starts growing, and the greens start growing off the turnip, and all you're doing is basically just taking the green part off and then letting that grow again, and taking that off and letting it grow again. And every time you cut it, it's going to grow faster and faster and faster and faster. But like we said, it's documentation is not only what's written in a book or empirical data. Documentation is everything in life. Can you read that? Can you live by that? That's simple stuff. I've shown you guys before in the past. I'm gonna be really heavy with it again. When we get about mid-March, you're gonna start seeing me, prepare to start putting stuff back out there, even if it is a little cold. You always got to be careful about learning when the last frost is, because the last frost is when you should determine when the new year for you starts as far as growing food. But yeah, you said you got chives and your artichokes are coming back. Yeah, a lot of that stuff, even if it looks like it's dead for a season, it ain't dead. You'd be surprised how long something looks like it can die. We have what is that? Was it a lemon tree or something? Looked like it was completely dead. Next thing you know, that thing's got leaves on it. And probably because we just needed to leave it alone, literally. Like once we left it alone, it was the leaves came, which means now that at some point the fruit will start coming. So you'd be surprised what you can grow, what stuff grows very quickly, um, and even a lot of stuff you can make for yourself. I talked about this last year. I didn't do it, so this year I got to keep my word. But I was talking about even showing y'all that we could start making loofahs. And but I didn't go through with the whole process. But the loofahs you use on your back and stuff, the natural ones, not the fake ones that y'all get, but the actual natural loofahs. The loofahs are just plants. Y'all know that, right? Like it's like we're used to the fake neon colored ones and stuff now that we buy, but a loofah is just a plant. The ones that you grew up with and they got the holes in them and stuff. That's because they're big seeds that are in the middle of them. Right, the loofahs. If what the loofah is, if you let it grow, I think if you let it grow for 2 months, it becomes like okra, and you can cook it and eat it like okra. But if you let it keep growing, it gets bigger and it hardens, and then that's when they turn it into a loofah. They take it, they cut the top off, they cut the bottom off, they knock the seeds and everything out the middle. That's why you get those little shafts in there. That's where the seeds were, and then basically from there, you let it completely dry and harden and stuff. Then you make sure that you attach it to a stick or a pole of some kind, and now you've got a loofah. You've been paying for those, but you can make those. So this year is actually a goal of mine. So y'all, now that I've said it out loud, and yet another thing I get to be held accountable to, but it's a goal of mine at some point to create some loofahs. And heck, no, who knows if we make enough of them? Maybe we see what they go for. I don't know, but it's a business. It could become a business. But I'm just trying to say, like, we have the ability to do this. Tomatoes are very easy, right? Tomatoes are very easy. All you got to do is make sure whatever you're growing it out of, that the vine has something to be able to go up to wrap around, so that you don't have to worry about it, but give the tomatoes a place, a vine, something that it can grow around. Once it starts growing around the vine, you straight. Or once the vine starts growing around whatever stick or whatever apparatus you're going to use, you straight. Yep, tomatoes. We matter of fact, up north, we let them grow on the chain link fence. I have to be careful when I'm cutting up there, because there's certain things we don't want growing up there, and I use one of the little weed cutters. I just use it on the whole thing. I should just go. I actually want to push lawnmower. I don't want to get an actual like electric one. I actually want to push one. I'm old school in that I actually like to push one. But yeah, I use a little electronic one right now. And yeah, but basically, yeah, we got to be very careful because we have tomatoes that grow right there. Matter of fact, strawberries grow next to the tomatoes. Some muscadines. Yeah, I never tasted the muscadine till like last year. I forget where we were. I think we were in Maryland, and there was some foraging going on. They were talking about muscadines and how some of my family had ate them when they were living down south when they were growing up in Florida, and I had never had one. And I was like, oh, it's all right. It wasn't really my thing, but I don't think they were fully mature yet. But I was like, I could see like how easy it would be, especially if you needed to survive. Now to eat off those for sure. But they definitely, for me at least, it felt like an acquired taste. But like I said, they weren't fully grown yet. So, you know, they weren't fully grown yet. So I don't know if I've ever actually really tasted a muscadine. I might need to go look for one. But yeah. So these are things are there. We're talking about reading. So even in Devestation, if you notice, and all this stuff, how we ended, we try to always end on a positive if we can, right? So I might have had muscadine wine before. So maybe I have tasted, I can't remember. But anyways, so so when we go through this stuff, when we go through these options, just realize, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, when we go through this stuff, realize that even in the midst of our just devastation, we can still do what? We can still decipher what's been documented. And if we find out even in our devastation that it's still possible. See, I just wanted you guys to see it's still possible. Oh yeah, the three sisters, of course. Yep. Beans grow up, right? And the corn and squash protect the other roots, things like that. Most definitely, right? You can literally grow beans at the bottom, have corn that's growing up, have squash or different things. Three sisters type thing. Look that up on YouTube. A lot of people teach on that. That's a very great way of growing. I haven't tried that technique yet, but I should. Right. But I'm just saying, there's a way out, right? It's documented. We've been stuck in this for so long that sometimes we identify this as the only way. but there's so much more that we can do. That being said, we're over time. And this is not a Sunday, so I'm not going to go into 12 o'clock territory. We appreciate you. Thanks for being on. We thank you so much for being on. I appreciate the King, Queen, each and every one of you. As always, please check out my wife, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we thank you so much. We will be on Patreon later today. So those of you who are, if you're looking for any of the information that we're going to give out in a second, if you're on YouTube, please look in the description to get in contact with us or look up some of the items that we're talking about. But those of you who will stay on and stay connected with us, feel free to go ahead and do so. And we're going to make sure that we take the opportunity to have music play for you guys, show you what's going on, and make sure that you see how you can, be part of what we're doing and how we're moving as a group and as a unit and as a family. If you're on TikTok, when we do at the end, we're going to ask in our shout out. Shout outs is when we ask people if they feel comfortable with it, telling us, where they are, maybe city and state, or at least the state. And we try to get in contact with you via DM. And then from there, see if we can. I can talk with you some, and then once I talk to you, see if you can talk to somebody else who's on the ministerial staff, and also some people in your area that are connected. So when we do meetups or different types of things, or if you need help with things, we can be able to be there for each other. We don't just want to do this virtually, or just do a little lesson and then don't check on each other. So for those that are on, when the music starts playing, please feel free to put your shout out there. And we appreciate you doing so. But I'll be back on for those who are part of the Patreon kingdom, part of the Patreon family. We'll see you guys at we'll see you guys at 7. What is it? I'm sorry. We'll see you guys at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. And then we'll see everybody else at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time on TikTok, Kofi_42. Don't forget our fast, intermittent fasting, all this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on Friday, when we meet up for the evening, we will not have anything other than just music playing, a background for you, and we're asking that you come in and type your prayer request in so that we can all touch and agree on those prayer requests together, getting ready to launch ourselves into the rest of 2023, where we're going to look beyond what we see. Last thing up as well. Last thing up as well, please come out on YouTube tomorrow, on our YouTube channel. If you're on TikTok, all you got to do is go to our main TikTok page, click on the link tree, and then click on #find, like you're looking for something, and Kofi, Kofi. That's our YouTube channel. If you get Google Calendar invites, just look for the link about 5 minutes before we start. We'll have our very own Minister Shante, who did an excellent gave us an excellent message yesterday for Early Rising Bible Study session. She'll be coming on again in front of you guys to give us an excellent message tomorrow on YouTube on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. Tomorrow's my day off. So I won't be on live tomorrow. Please support Minister Shante and give an excellent word and support one another. And also, we won't have anything in the evening tomorrow. So we'll have an evening session tomorrow. We'll have our Patreon session. Evening session tonight, Patreon session tonight, Patreon session 7 p.m. Eastern, live session 8 p.m. Eastern. Those who have class tonight, Hebrew characters, 9 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And then tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central, 6 a.m. Midwest or Mountain, whatever that is, and then 5 a.m. Pacific. Minister Shante will be on with an excellent message for us, and we look forward to you guys coming on and supporting. So thank you. We appreciate you. We honor you. We look forward to your presence, and thank you so much. Everything else, information is going to be here right here on TikTok as we do our shout out at the end. So I thank you for guys for listening in again. I really, really do appreciate you so very much. And don't forget your affirmations. Romans chapter 8, verse 1, Romans chapter 8, verse 11, Romans chapter 8, verse 18, Romans chapter 8, verse 19, and Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And we thank you guys for being obedient and doing everything the Most High has asked you to do. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, Yahshua, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. We'll let some praise and worship music flow. And feel free to say where you are, shout out where you are, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Shalom. Peace.